that really has made European rates move a lot? It's probably both. And let's not forget, tomorrow we get first look at third quarter GDP, a biggie for traders. And of course, we'll get a glimpse, just a glimpse, of what may occur on the jobs number with ADP, the first of the two jobs reports. Kelly, back to you.
That's right, Rick. Thank you very much, sir. Those little mortgage rates juicing pending home sales, which rose to a 21-month high in September, up nearly 4% from a year earlier. That's according to the National Association of Realtors. We also got a read on August prices from S&P Case-Shiller, and nationally, they rose just over 3%. The home builders were at 52-week highs this month, and the Fed is expected to deliver another round of rate cuts tomorrow. But are these stocks, which are all selling off today, hitting a ceiling? Let's bring in Ken Leon. He's a home builder analyst at CFRA. Ken, it's been a great year for these stocks. Is that the gains kind of made at this point?
That's the debate for investors, because the home builder index is up 60%. Last year was down 35%. The year before, 75%. This is a hyper-cyclical group. You got to get it right. So it's really to the outlook for 2020.
And is it more dependent on rates, on the macro environment? What's the key sort of fundamental factor to watch?
I think it's transitioning to the micro. The macro, as you've noted, looks pretty good, but we're going into the slower winter months. For the builders then, what we're seeing is a slowdown in orders and backlog value compared to unit volume. Part of that is secular moving to entry-level homes. The other part is maybe the housing market is slowing down a bit.
Is there seasonal trade involved, Ken? We had Tom Leon earlier this week from Fundstrat, and he had done a study and found that we're in a golden period of 6 months from October 20th through April 20th. Seasonally, home builders outperformed the S&P 500, and it's happened 9 out of the past 10 years, especially when rates are rising. And I'm wondering if you see seasonality as a factor at all.
It's a great question, and what I'm seeing in the markets is sometimes in anticipation of that, that kind of rotation and performance happens a little bit before you anticipate the period. And home builder stocks have done terrific since mid-August.
Ken, of your coverage universe, I see you have a buy on Taylor Morrison and a hold on most of the rest, a sell on Toll Brothers. Why Taylor Morrison?
They report tomorrow. To get even stronger performance as a home builder, you need to aggressively increase community count and migration to entry level and first move up. They're doing a terrific job. It's easier on year-over-year comps, whether it's Taylor Morrison, KB Homes, or Meritage Homes, to get that kind of comparisons. If you're a larger builder or toll brother in the near luxury market and geography, some of the more difficult areas like California, the year-over-year comps are much more difficult. So on a relative basis, they're going to lag.
All right. Ken, appreciate it today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, more and more fund managers are warning about market sell-offs if Elizabeth Warren is elected president. But what about self-proclaimed socialist Bernie Sanders? What if he wins? What happens to markets then? That's next.
A dark Tuesday evening. Suddenly, everything goes pitch black. You're driving blind. What evil lurks in the gloom? What hides in the shadows around that corner, beyond that bend? Will you ever feel safe again? Course you will. Come to Halfords. We fit new headlight bulbs on the spot from just £8. And we're open late 7 days a week. See halfords.com for opening hours. Here in Chiswick. Ready for longer nights? Ready for anything. Halfords. For life's journeys.
Bulbs sold separately. Selected vehicles only in most stores.
Fly with Cathay Pacific to over 70 destinations across Asia and Australia and move beyond the familiar. State-of-the-art cabins, world-class entertainment and award-winning service, making sure you arrive ready to make the most of whatever lies ahead. Whether it's the stunning coastlines of Sydney, the secluded waterfalls of Bali, or the baroque splendor of Manila. Book now at cathaypacific.com. Cathay Pacific. Move beyond.
Hey, it's me again, the TV. Since my family gave me Now TV, there's no more endlessly searching for something they want to watch, because now I don't do filler TV, just killer TV. If my family want horrors, no problem. It's not real, it's not real, it's not real. Or crime dramas, I've got loads. And they're never going to guess who did it. Or how about thrillers? They're going to be on the edge of their seats with these. Now they can watch whatever they're in the mood for.
What's your TV got for you tonight? Now TV. 18 plus, month passes auto renew, terms apply.
Hi, I'm back. I just set a personal best on my park run. Feels great.
That's lovely, Mike. I think you've earned the right to put all the bins out.
Hey?
With Vitality Life Insurance, you get properly rewarded when you're active. In fact, you could save over £730 every year in discounts and rewards from our partners. Join over 1 million customers. Just search Vitality Life. Vitality. Positively different. Annual savings available with certain plans and are dependent on members' usage of rewards available. Terms and conditions apply.
Swinging a long drive, left field. He's got one now. Kurt Suzuki gives the Nationals the lead.
The excitement of the Fall Classic is here, and you can hear every call of the 2019 World Series on TuneIn Premium. The action continues tonight with Game 6 between the NL champion Washington Nationals and American League champion Houston Astros. Listen live at 8 Eastern as two of Major League Baseball's most storied franchises look to bring home the World Series title. The 2019 World Series is on TuneIn Premium.
Paul Tudor Jones becoming the latest hedge fund manager to warn about a big stock market decline if Elizabeth Warren were elected president. How would they all feel about Bernie Sanders, who calls himself a socialist? John Harwood sat down with Senator Sanders and asked him how far he thought he could pull the U.S. towards democratic socialism.
Well, it depends, what we mean by democratic socialism. What I'm trying to do in this campaign is pick up where Roosevelt left off and say that economic rights must be considered as human rights. You can judge a candidate for president by the enemies they have. And I uniquely, in all due respect to my colleagues, I am taking on the insurance companies, the drug companies, the fossil fuel industry, the military industrial complex, the prison industrial complex, Wall Street, the Democratic establishment. There was a guy who's head of Third Way. That's the corporate wing of the Democratic Party. And he said, Bernie Sanders is an existential threat to the Democratic Party. I agree with him. I am. I want to convert the Democratic Party to break its dependency on big money and corporate interests.
Would it be your intention to appoint Democratic socialists to big positions in your administration?
You're going a little bit too crazy on the word here. I will appoint people who believe in the working class and the working families of this country, who are prepared to stand up to the incredibly powerful corporate interests that today dominate our economic and political life. So when I talk about democratic socialism, you want to talk about, what does it mean? Let's be clear, what does it mean? Let's not get people overly nervous about it. What it means is that healthcare is a human right. Not a very radical idea.
John Harwood joins us now from Washington. And John, it is Elizabeth Warren who has surged in the polls lately, and thus the reaction when asked what that would mean for things like the stock market. Has Bernie Sanders in a way, and Elizabeth Warren might actually go on and win, who knows, has Bernie Sanders in a way already won? Because the party now reflects so many of the priorities that he's said he's been pushing for 3 decades. He said he wanted to, I forget his language there, make it over, or he was an existential threat. Well, now they've kind of come around to his point of view.
Well, Kelly, it's a good point. He claims partial credit since 2016 in his campaign then against Hillary Clinton for having moved the party on things like Medicare for all, on things like free college at public universities. However, he's still in this thing, and there's a new poll out today in New Hampshire that shows him in first place in New Hampshire. He does trail both Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren in the national polls, but he's got more money in the bank right now than any other candidate in the race. So he's got a little bit of room to run here, and it's interesting. In our NBC Wall Street Journal poll, we've showed that the two characteristics that voters consider least attractive in a Democratic presidential candidate are, 1, being a socialist, and 2, being over 75 years old. Bernie Sanders is 78. He just had a heart attack. He's a Democratic socialist. He's still in this game.
You know, John, in our intro to your piece with Bernie Sanders, we mentioned Paul Tudor Jones in his comments about a stock market decline. He was guessing that an Elizabeth Warren victory would send the stock market down 25%. A Sanders victory would send the markets down by 20%. I'm wondering if Bernie Sanders himself even cares what the stock market could or could not do in response to his victory.
Well, I think at the moment, getting criticized by people on Wall Street or having predictions of that kind for both Warren and Sanders are positives within the Democratic Party. Different story if you actually get elected and then you have to superintend the economy. Then you're a little bit more concerned about the consequences. He does say that he wants to fundamentally change the way corporations are governed, but he does not want to get rid of private corporations. If Bernie Sanders manages to get elected, which I think is a less than 50-50 chance, but it's not impossible, you would likely have a Democratic Senate, and then you would test how far you could go with his agenda. He says by putting public pressure, he could get even conservative Democrats like Joe Manchin to come around to his program. We will see if that's the case should he break through.
All right, John, thank you.
You bet.
John Harwood with the latest Speakeasy. And Check Please is next.
It's another Tuesday evening, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and relax with 365 beautiful beaches.
So yes, sir, what would you like to have?
Fly from London Gatwick to Antigua with British Airways from £223 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday for the ultimate football fan experience, featuring 7 hours of commercial-free coverage of every scoring play around the NFL.
Swinging a long drive, left field. He's got one now. Kurt Suzuki gives the Nationals the lead.
The excitement of the Fall Classic is here, and you can hear every call of the 2019 World Series on TuneIn Premium. The action continues tonight with Game 6 between the NL champion Washington Nationals and American League champion Houston Astros. Listen live at 8 Eastern as two of Major League Baseball's most storied franchises look to bring home the World Series title. The 2019 World Series is on TuneIn Premium.
Looking for a new podcast to inspire your work life? On the latest edition of Pod Club, Adam Grant, host of TED Podcast Work Life, shares the pods that have blown his mind.
What episode surprised me most and why? I think that was probably The Office Without A-Holes. I went in thinking that getting rid of bullies and selfish takers and jerks would be an almost impossible task. I was convinced that difficult conversations with the worst people in your work life don't always have to be difficult.
Go to Podcast on TuneIn to see Adam's Pod Club picks.
What if you could keep up with cable news even when you're on the go? With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to MSNBC live without any commercial interruptions. All of the news, none of the ads. Listen live on TuneIn Premium today.
Get social with TuneIn. Follow TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to discover what's happening in the app and around the world. Be the first to know about upcoming games and the hottest new music. Follow at TuneIn and always be in the know.
Check, please.
Obviously, the Fed is front and center for tomorrow, but we're also going to be watching Apple. Apple reports earnings, very key to the market, of course. And in today's session, interesting price action for Apple. It hits a new 52-week high, all-time high, and now it's back down by 2.6%. So it's interesting positioning going ahead. We've seen for a lot of these tech names a run up into earnings and then a sell-off out of them. So you wonder if this sort of lowers the bar.
The hot new pair trade lately has been Apple and JP Morgan. So I'm curious if earnings is a headwind for that or not. Just want to quickly mention Kellogg, which is higher today. They said demand for Pringles and Cheez-Its is offsetting the drop in people eating sugary cereals.
So they want salt instead of sugar, and that's what's happening.
I've been eating this. You know, I'm going to make some Muddy Buddies. Have you ever had Muddy Buddies?
No.
With the Chex, and you put the peanut butter and the chocolate and the powdered sugar.
It's like a sweet and salty thing?
Kind of.
I like them segregated. Thank you for watching Power Lunch.
Closing bell starts right now.
Those pilots never had a chance. These loved ones never had a chance. They were in flying coffins.
You have told this committee and you've told me half-truths over and over again, including in that meeting. This is why I am so upset.
I would walk before I was to get on a 737 MAX. I would walk.
You're the CEO. The buck stops with you. Did you read this document? And how did your team not put it in front of you, run in with their hair on fire, saying, we got a real problem here?
That was the U.S. Senate putting Boeing CEO Dennis Muhlenberg through the ringer today. Welcome to the Closing Bell. I'm Morgan Brennan in for Sarah Eisen at the Boeing Post. With that stock actually rebounding right now, it's up 2%. We've got more on that. In the meantime, the rest of the market hovering near all-time highs. We've got 59 minutes to see if we can eke out a new record.
Yeah, but just losing that momentum, Morgan, in the last few minutes. Now red on the S&P 500. I'm Wilfred Frost. Good afternoon to you. Let's look at what's driving the action. Some trade pessimism as we got news that phase one of the US-China trade deal may not be signed in November as planned. Solid earnings reports from Merck and Pfizer helping give the healthcare sector a boost. But tech has turned lower with disappointing results from Alphabet and Grubhub, dragging the NASDAQ lower. Also to come today in our Beyond the Bundle series, we will get the details from AT&T about their new HBO Max service, and we'll also speak with one of the disruptors in the space, Philo CEO Andrew McCullum, who just so happened to also be one of the founding team at Facebook. The interview coming up here on Closing Bell. You don't want to miss it. Let's check in on the markets. We are just negative now for all three of the major indices. Of course, any positive close for the S&P is another record all-time close. The NASDAQ, we are slipping by about 0.5% away as it got close to its own record. Yesterday, healthcare materials lead the charge, communication services, technology lag. Joining us for the full hour, Steve Grasso from Stuart Frankel. Stephen, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Thanks for joining us. I mean, we've slipped the last hour or two, but why is that? And,
I think you hit it on the head. It was about the trade headline, and we've had an enormous rally in the market, being as though we couldn't get above old-time highs. We popped above them. So there's a high benchmark to keep us moving higher. We need better trade data, or we need better trade progress. FOMC tomorrow. And we also need to see earnings. So we've got earnings. We are on wait on FOMC. And now any negative headline on trade is going to be perceived as a sell first, ask questions later. And that's what we saw today.
Is that what's hurting Apple? Melissa mentioned it just now before handing over. Was up 1%, record all-time high. It's now down over 2%. What's happened there?
Yeah, I think it's silly to put that much into one headline that we saw today. Things are still moving forward. And you heard the administration say, this doesn't mean that a trade deal is not moving or progressing forward. It just means that maybe it's not going to be done as quickly as the market had thought. So it's got everyone back on their heels again.
All right, well, let's focus in on the big stories we're watching today. Phil LeBeau has more details on today's Boeing hearing. Bob Pisani has a look at what we've learned from earnings season so far as we reach the halfway mark. And Meg Terrell is covering some big moves in the firm space. Phil, first to you on Boeing.
Morgan, the senators blasted Dennis Muhlenberg about the culture at Boeing and whether or not they had cut corners in the development of the 737 MAX. But there was also a line of questioning that a number of senators were pursuing whether or not Boeing and the FAA have too cozy of a relationship.
So has the balance gone too far to allowing industry to police itself?
Senator, I don't know if I can characterize it that way. My sense is that we all have the same objective here. We all want the safest industry possible. That is our objective. And my sense is that we could look at the balance, that there are refinements that would be worthy.
So when you look at the MAX and look at the relationship between Boeing and the FAA, remember, they need to get this plane certified. Boeing's target remains to having it certified by the FAA by the end of the fourth quarter, but they still have several hurdles to clear before they even get to that point. And that brings up the question, is there growing pressure on the FAA? Remember that Boeing, as you take a look at shares of the stock, which did move higher today while Dennis Muhlenberg was on Capitol Hill, they are planning to ramp up production of the 737 MAX starting in the spring of next year, going all the way up through the end of next year to dramatically more than what they're making right now. They're at 42 a month now, guys. They want to get up to 57 a month by the end of next year.
Phil, what's your take as to whether Muhlenberg today successfully convinced everyone that he and his company always put safety first?
No, I don't think they did that. I don't think so. You can see it. A lot of it was in the commentary from the senators, and they weren't buying what he was selling. Now, look, he said time and again that we made mistakes, that Boeing needs to do better, and that he believes changes are being put in place so that the company can make the safest plane possible, whether it's with the MAX or future models. But you got this sense from listening to the senators that they're not buying that culture, that safety is at the core of what Boeing does. So this sets up tomorrow, guys, where the House will have a crack at Dennis Muhlenberg. And in some ways, the House may be even tougher than the Senate because there are a couple of representatives there who have been doing some extensive investigations. And I suspect they're going to have among the toughest questions for Dennis Muhlenberg tomorrow.
But Phil, if people don't believe that he always put safety first, something that he said in the past he did always do, then is he going to lose another one of his management titles? The one
You're asking the question, is he going to be replaced as CEO? Look, we asked him that before he went in. He essentially said, look, I'm not going to answer that question. I'm focused on getting the MAX back in the air. Whether or not that happens, Wilf, as I said earlier today, I don't think that that's a question that the board is looking at right now because that would add more turmoil to what is already a very tumultuous situation with the 737 MAX. Could it be addressed somewhere down the road? That's a possibility as well. But what this does do, Wilf, this puts greater pressure on the FAA. They want to certify this plane once they believe it is safe. But they already have egg on their face from what happened back when the plane was grounded around the world and they kept on saying, nope, it's safe, keep flying it. So I think that you would see even greater care and perhaps more time being taken with any decision to recertify the MAX.
Phil, thank you as always. For more, let's get some perspective from Richard Safran from Buckingham Research and Jim Corridor from CFRA Research. As always, good afternoon to you both. Richard, starting with you, do these hearings matter for the share price?
I don't think I think they matter from the share price from one perspective, and that is a lot of investors view these types of hearings as kind of like close to the end of the process. I think shareholders, are generally inclined to get bullish. I think they'd like to get more certainty around when the MAX is actually going to be certified. But what these hearings essentially do is get a possible negative out of the way. And I think one of the things you saw today from these hearings was that there wasn't anything incrementally negative. In other words, there's nothing incremental to what investors already knew.
Jim, you've continued to have a buy rating on the stock. Is that how you see it, especially given the fact that shares of Boeing are trading up 2% today?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that came out of the hearing today is that he didn't make it worse. The stock price reaction shows that he had a calm demeanor. He answered all their questions forthrightly. Certainly there is questions as to whether Boeing does have a safety culture, but as of now, they're going to be given the chance to bring this plane back onto service and to prove that they do have a safe plane. And I think the fact that the stock reacted today shows that things are not getting worse, at least.
Rich, the questions that focused around not just Boeing, but the intersection of Boeing and regulators and the FAA and where, I guess, the maybe safety protocols, the lines have been blurred. Was that the most notable thing that came out of the testimony today? I
think clearly, if you look at what the senators were focused on and where it really resonated, it was on this relationship between the FAA and Boeing. And I think what you're going to see, we all know changes are coming, right? But I think, a way we can sum this up is that the relationship has to be more antagonistic. The FAA has to do more to challenge Boeing, more to question Boeing, right? More, et cetera. And I think that was what we saw from several of the senators today who were zeroing in on this relationship with Boeing.
Stephen, where do you stand on this share price?
So I think, well, if you look at it, it's up 8% year to date. And if you would have put you in a confinement and said all these negative headlines and not told you what stock it was, you would think the stock would be cut in half or would be underwater. We haven't seen that. So I don't know how much of this is that there's only two major players in this arena and that there is a pseudo backstop on this stock. And maybe I'm hallucinating that or maybe I'm making that up. But the bottom line is there is a duopoly. So I do believe that has been the underpinning in this name, and it has performed better than anyone would have thought otherwise.
So, Jim, to go back to the question that Wilf raised before, once we see a return to service of the 737 MAX, once the worst of the crisis is actually out of the way and over, do you expect Dennis Muhlenberg to continue to be in the CEO role? And if not, who would take over?
Yeah, I think that as long as the plane does come back out into service without undue delays past maybe January, as long as they can get the PR moving to convince the flying public that the plane's safe, get the FAA on board, get global regulators on board, start moving these planes, get all the log jam at their facilities out, and start shipping again, and start improving their finances, I think he has a good chance to retain his job. Obviously, mistakes were made, and they acknowledge that, but how they act going forward is what matters, and I think going forward, given the duopoly in industry, given the huge backlog of commercial orders that Boeing has, that they will return to the financial powerhouse that they once were.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Richard Safran and Jim Corridor, thanks for joining us today.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, turning now to the broader market as we reach the halfway point in earnings season. Bob Pisani is here at the Exchange with a look at the big takeaways so far. Bob.
A little bit of a split. The consumer's doing really well. U.S. consumer, the global cyclicals, not so much. Here's the poster child for the U.S. consumer, MasterCard. Same situation as Visa last week. Great numbers, good guidance, revenue growth, maybe 15% for the year. That's up from low teens. So the consumer's in good shape. Capital One said the same thing. Then you get the big global cyclical names. They've basically been lowering their numbers. So we saw this day with Eaton, big global power management company, electrical system, big in Europe and Asia. They lowered their guidance. Cummins diesel engines around the world here, lower truck production in a lot of markets. They lowered their guidance. Of course, GM, we know this is largely on the strike, but we know the problems with auto productions around the world as well. These lower estimates aren't happening with consumer staples or healthcare. Much more stable earnings growth. There, of course, more defense. So here's where we are at the first half of the year here. U.S. consumers have been strong. Industrials, materials, and energy coming down. Guys, back to you.
Bob, thanks so much for that. Bob Pisani on the floor. Earnings from Merck and Pfizer hitting today before the bell, and they have both helped buoy the healthcare sector, which leads the sectors on the S&P 500. Meg's been diving into those results for us. Hi, Meg.
Hey, well, full different story for pharma. It was a beat and raise for both Pfizer and Merck in the third quarter, helping boost both of their stocks today. For Merck, its juggernaut cancer drug Keytruda contributed to the beat. The medicine drew more than $3 billion in quarterly sales, topping analyst estimates by $200 million. And for Pfizer, outperformance came from its breast cancer drug Ibrance and Prevnar 13 vaccine. And while both stocks are up today, they've moved in opposite directions year to date. Merck in favor as Keytruda continues to outperform, and Pfizer still not yet recovered, guys, from its July deal with Mylan. Wolf, back over to you.
Meg, thanks so much for that. HCA also performing well today, again helping that healthcare sector higher. After the break, Senator Mark Warner sending a letter to Mark Zuckerberg asking him to rethink Facebook's controversial political ad policy. We'll speak with the senator exclusively about that letter next.
Plus, it's another massive afternoon for earnings with reports ahead from EA, Mondelez, Amgen, AMD, and many more. We're going to bring you all of those numbers as soon as they hit. And as we head to break, here's a check on our data tracker. Pending home sales coming in ahead of estimates in September, rising 1.5%. And consumer confidence in October missed the mark with a reading of 125.9 versus estimates of 128. Closing bell, we'll be right back.
This CNBC program is sponsored by...
It's another Tuesday evening. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Experience Mexican culture and relax by the Caribbean Sea. Fly from London Gatwick to Cancun with British Airways from £275 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and be unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Swinging a long drive, left field. He's got one now. Kurt Suzuki gives the Nationals the lead.
The excitement of the Fall Classic is here, and you can hear every call of the 2019 World Series on TuneIn Premium. The action continues tonight with Game 6 between the NL champion Washington Nationals and American League champion Houston Astros. Listen live at 8 Eastern as two of Major League Baseball's most storied franchises look to bring home the World Series title. The 2019 World Series is on TuneIn Premium. Hey, NFL fans, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can hear every NFL game live as it's happening, or catch it later on demand. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Want to know what's happening in right now? The latest headlines are just a tap away with Fox News Talk on TuneIn. When news breaks, get up-to-the-minute coverage on developing stories from around the world. Plus, hear all the Fox shows you watch on your TV. Listen to Fox News Talk around the clock on TuneIn.
Get social with TuneIn. Follow TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to discover what's happening in the app and around the world. Be the first to know about upcoming games and the hottest new music. Follow @TuneIn and always be in the know.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Let's check in on some individual market movers. Lockheed Martin's F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program has landed a $34 billion contract with the Pentagon, the largest contract yet for the program. It covers 3 production lots. Deal is for 478 aircraft. And as you can see, the stock's actually trading down slightly. It's down about 0.4%, even though the F-35A through this contract is going to drop below $80 million, so about a year early in terms of that price target. Here's a check, meantime, on Virgin Galactic. That stock losing steam in today's session as well. It's at about 7% after making its public debut here yesterday on the New York Stock Exchange, becoming the first publicly traded commercial human spaceflight company. It popped yesterday, seeing it come back down to earth, pardon the pun, today, but certainly one to keep an eye on.
Meantime, pressure mounting on Facebook after the company's decision to exempt political ads by politicians from third-party fact-checking, with employees and Congress calling for change. Virginia Senator Mark Warner is now asking Facebook to provide more transparency over its policy and telling the company to hold itself to the same standards as cable networks, stating in a personal letter to CEO Mark Zuckerberg, quote, Facebook's apparent lack of foresight or concern for the possible damages caused by this policy concerns me. And going even further to state that transparency itself has, quote, been undermined, at least in part, because of the nature, architecture, policies, and operation of platforms like Facebook. For more, let's bring in Senator Mark Warner in a CNBC exclusive interview. Good afternoon to you, Senator. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
At the headline, what's wrong with Facebook's current policy here?
Well, what Facebook, and let's be clear, we're talking about ads sponsored by politicians. First of all, we have no rules at all with those kind of ads. I think there should be basic disclosure requirements. Facebook has moved in that direction. I don't think fully, but they have moved in that direction. But this case of saying if a politician sponsors an ad, that politician can lie with impunity, I think has enormous repercussions. I think we even saw that in the testimony last week when Zuckerberg tried to defend this policy. And a member of Congress asked appropriately, well, what happens if somebody is running under the banner of the American Nazi Party? Does that, by the virtue of being a candidate, allow that kind of Nazi propaganda to be posted on Facebook, a Facebook that 68% of Americans look at on a daily basis, 170 million plus Americans, and there is going to be no governance at all on that kind of political advertising? And think as well, what's unique about Facebook is not only can a candidate put forward a purely false ad, but then that ad can be reinforced by foreign-based bots, by memes, by outside governments, and we can be assured that Russia and other nations will intervene in the 2020 election. And I think the Facebook policy plays directly into their hands. One last point, and we even saw this today, where someone has announced that they're running for governor in California way before the 2022 election, but he's going to go ahead and register as a candidate so he can start putting up fake ads right away. This is not going to improve the quality of our political debate, and I just wish Facebook would have thought this through rather than laying out this policy that I hope they'll reconsider.
Senator, as you make clear in this letter, three-page letter, that being allowed to lie with impunity seems, frankly, ridiculous to be something that should be permitted. So why do you think Facebook is doing this? Why not preempt it? Do you think they're just desperate for the dollars in what is going to be a bumper political year?
I hope not. Candidly, I think that Facebook could have avoided all of this. They're a big enough company. If they would have simply not allowed political advertising, probably the quality of our political debate might improve if that took place. They chose not to do that. That's their business decision. But I don't think this is a case of them trying to scrounge out a few more dollars. I do think there are legitimate First Amendment concerns, and clearly there is a First Amendment right. If you are a broadcast television station, you have an obligation under your FCC license to go ahead and put up that ad. Facebook has no such obligation. That's why I think Facebook, with their reach, with the ability to have their platform manipulated by bots, by other foreign influences, much different than broadcast or, for that matter, cable television. That's why I've suggested, look at the analogy is better to cable. Cable is willing to take down a political ad that is demonstrably false. It still falls on the obligation of an entity who can prove that the ad is demonstrably false. So that's a pretty high standard. And I think that standard would have worked well for Facebook. And again, my hope is that they will reconsider, because I think the absurdity of their current position, whether it's American Nazis or people running for governor in California today just so they can put up fake ads and lying ads, the threat that this poses with reinforcing activities of foreign governments, this is going to be a disaster.
So, Senator Warner, I mean, when you talk about the fact that Facebook has no such obligation, it gets right back at the heart of this regulation discussion that we've been having, and it begs the question then, why aren't lawmakers like yourself, and I know you've put some legislation out there, but why aren't lawmakers then passing regulations that would require a company like Facebook to adhere to some of those obligations that other types of communications companies have to as well?
Amen. I couldn't agree with you more. There is a bipartisan working group that's working on a privacy bill. I think that will be important. I've got bipartisan legislation that would require, if you advertise political ads on Facebook, same kind of disclosure if you advertise on CNBC. That should be a no-brainer. I've got bipartisan legislation that says we ought to know what kind of data is being collected on us and what it's worth.
But why hasn't it moved through Congress then?
Well, listen, that may be a more metaphysical question in terms of, I can assure you, as somebody who works here, I am as frustrated as most of the viewers. I do have some optimism that we may see a bill move with privacy. Privacy is necessary but not sufficient. And these other bills, for example, a bill that would allow us to know whether we're talking to a human being or a bot. You know, we're not going to get rid of bots. I don't want to get rid of bots, but we ought to have that transparency. I do think, and I am hopeful still, that we could see privacy move within the next month or so, and then this other legislation attached to it. But you ask a very fair question. You know, we're 3.5 years after the Russians manipulated Facebook in 2016. Why don't we have rules of the road in place?
Even still, Senator, you're still just really talking about political advertising and then taking more responsibility for the authenticity and accuracy of that. Why not for all posts, when they are making money alongside it, when they are actually promoting those posts? Should they not be held accountable as a publisher in the same way that a cable company would be for any advertisement, whether it's for a drink, for a cleaning product, or for a political ad?
Let me break that into two parts. The first part is, and Facebook, I will acknowledge, has made progress on this. The ads that they are having their current kind of policy standards saying that if it's demonstrably false, they'll deal with, would be political ads. So if there is a ad sponsored by the Republican Party or the Democratic Party or some third-party group. So they are taking more responsibility there. On the question about why not view Facebook the same way we would view any media company, that goes back to the rules that were set up in the late 90s. There was something created in the law called Section 230 exemption that basically said these platforms, Facebook, Google, are not responsible for any of their content. That probably made sense in the late 90s. These were nascent industries. But today in America, when 65% of Americans get some or all of their news from Facebook and Google. I think we do need to revisit that. The Section 230 debate is a complicated one. There's not a simple answer, but I think it's definitely time to roll up our sleeves and look at how we can reform on that. And we already have made reforms. We have, for example, prohibited sex trafficking, child prostitution, bomb making. So there has been some movement around content. Going further will be something that I think we have to explore.
Yeah. Senator Mark Warner, thanks for joining us today. We
Thank you.
appreciate it. Shares of Facebook are up fractionally right now.
We've got a news alert. It's on the House impeachment inquiry, and Eamon Javers has got the details for us. Hi, Eamon.
Yeah, Wilfred, that's right. Democrats up on Capitol Hill have now released the text of a resolution they say they're going to vote on Thursday that will authorize public hearings in the impeachment process up on Capitol Hill. So far, all those hearings that have taken place have been behind closed doors. Democrats keen to suggest this is not the beginning of a process. They say the process has already begun. So they're saying here that the committees are now being authorized or directed to continue their ongoing investigations as part of the existing House of Representatives inquiry into whether sufficient grounds exist for the House of Representatives to exercise its constitutional power to impeach Donald John Trump, President of the United States of America. This document is going to set the rules of the road for those public hearings, which you can imagine will be highly watched across the country. One thing that's interesting here is that they are saying these will be public hearings and that the Republican members, the minority members on the committee will be allowed to question the witnesses for an equal amount of time. But they're laying out a set of rules here in which the first 90 minutes of the question and answer session in this hearing is going to be unlike what a lot of our viewers are used to up on Capitol Hill, where you see each member go around the dais, each one getting 5 minutes, each one sort of making as much of a speech as asking any questions. In this case, they're laying out a process by which the ranking member, the minority member, and the chair, or a staff member they designate, will be able to question the witnesses for a total period of 90 minutes before you get into that 5-minute Q&A from the rest of the members. So there will be a lengthy questioning by a professional staff member or by the ranking member or chair themselves before you get into all the members having an opportunity to get in on the questioning on these witnesses. That might give it more of a coherent feel rather than the short sort of BB gun style that we've seen from other hearings up on Capitol Hill. So a new set of rules here. They say they're going to vote on all this on Thursday, Will.
Yeah. We were just talking about transparency around Facebook. It would be good to see some transparency in the House with this process as well. Eamon Javers, thank you.
You bet.
After the break, should Alphabet be broken up? A new analyst note makes the case for the Google parent to spin off YouTube. We'll get the word on the street on that call next.
Market Movers is sponsored by Payden and Regal.
It's another Tuesday evening, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Right now, the future is being written by people like you. Creative thinkers, tech lovers, problem solvers. Are you going to stand by and watch? Well, show the world what you've got. Join others around the UK on an EY degree apprenticeship in digital and technology. And earn a salary working with exciting businesses while studying towards a degree. Don't let the future pass you by. Get involved. For more information and to apply, search EY Digital Apprentice.
NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium.
Toss to the right, goes to the end zone, caught by Fells!
15, 10, 5, touchdown, Green Bay!
This Thursday on Halloween night, hear the home and away call as the San Francisco 49ers visit the Arizona Cardinals at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
Back, what a block! Touchdown for Kevin Coleman going the other way! Touchdown!
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Swinging a long drive, left field. He's got one now. Kurt Suzuki gives the Nationals the lead.
The excitement of the Fall Classic is here, and you can hear every call of the 2019 World Series on TuneIn Premium. The action continues tonight with Game 6 between the NL champion Washington Nationals and American League champion Houston Astros. Listen live at 8 Eastern as two of Major League Baseball's most storied franchises look to bring home the World Series title. The 2019 World Series is on TuneIn Premium.
Looking for a new podcast to inspire your work life? On the latest edition of Pod Club, Adam Grant, host of TED Podcast Work Life, shares the pods that have blown his mind.
What episode surprised me most and why? I think that was probably The Office Without A-Holes. I went in thinking that getting rid of bullies and selfish takers and jerks would be an almost impossible task. I was convinced that difficult conversations with the worst people in your work life don't always have to be difficult.
Go to Podcast on TuneIn to see Adam's Pod Club picks.
30 minutes left of trade, and both the Dow and the S&P are hugging the flat line right now. Let's send it over to Mike Santoli for today's market dashboard. Mike.
Morgan, thank you very much. First, take a look at Not So Seamless, the parent company of Seamless Food Delivery Service, being torn apart today. I'm going to put that in some broader context. Then a stitch in time. Might we see a pause in the market as we reach these new record highs? See what history has to say about that. A new plot thread. Old versus new media 1 year after the S&P media communications sector was restructured. And then fraying confidence. That's a couple different looks at consumer sentiment right now. Take a look at this chart of Grubhub along with a couple of other what I would call smaller consumer-facing e-commerce companies, Yelp and Zillow. And that's compared to Amazon, of course, the kind of dominant e-commerce name. This is over 2 years. So you see, yes, Grubhub is getting destroyed today, down 44% after they had earnings and poor guidance and a lot of questions about the business model. But these subscale internet companies have actually struggled for a while now to figure out what their place is, what the economics of their own business are, and against these very broad set of competitors, as well as, by the way, consumer behavior that's pretty fickle and they don't want to pay for anything. So I do think there's something going on here. Reminds me a little bit of what happened with OpenTable, really far off its highs before it was acquired by Booking Holdings, and then Booking Holdings ended up taking a write-down on the price. So obviously a struggle for these smaller internet names, guys.
Mike, unsurprising to see Uber down as well today, some 3%.
That's exactly right.
Albeit Lyft is as well down a bit, and it's not in the same business. But Mike, thank you. Time to get word on the street now.
Piper Jaffray initiating Slack and overweight. The firm says the company is disrupting the email status quo, has favorable risk reward following a 51% sell-off from its June highs, and that revenue could quadruple to $2.5 billion by 2024.
Wells Fargo initiating FedEx and UPS at Outperform, saying trade challenges weighing on the shares provide a buy-the-dip opportunity for investors, and that e-commerce trends could provide growth opportunities for those stocks going forward. Wells Fargo also initiating railroad stocks at market weight with Canadian Pacific, Kansas City Southern, and Norfolk Southern as their top picks. And Needham out with a new note suggesting Alphabet should spin off YouTube. The firm says YouTube could be worth $300 billion alone, and that a spin-off would make Alphabet smaller as it faces regulatory pushback from Washington. Needham also says a spin-off would increase leadership accountability and provide streaming investors a strong alternative to the likes of Netflix and Roku. An interesting idea that, Steve, of the businesses Google has, you can see a clearer rationale for spinning off YouTube and less need for it to still be part of the overall pie with the kind of synergies that the other businesses might have across
YouTube has always been called the crown jewel of Google. So I would assume when you look at this has been in the target zone for antitrust. This has been in the target zone for DC. So there's been a weight on Google, but it's still performed. It's up 20% year to date. I think it's a buy either way, but you still have a lot of green to get through the government headwinds that you're seeing, and they are really going after Google in a big way, so be careful with that one.
Yeah, it's also interesting. Something that's been flying under the radar with Google is the fact that they are, and this was reported on CNBC in the last 24 hours, that they're looking at logistics possibilities and held a conference around that as well. So bringing, I guess, the call on some of those transport stocks and the call here on Google together, it seems like, again, the lines are blurring.
You know what's interesting, really quick on the transport stocks, November, seasonality-wise, is the best month for UPS and FedEx, not December. December's the worst. But for both stocks, even though UPS has outperformed FedEx, transport stocks, November is the month to buy it.
Either way, Google trading down a couple of percent today. All of FANG, actually Facebook just higher by 1 basis point, but tech certainly suffering today after those disappointing numbers from Google last night. Time for a CNBC News update. Sue Herrera's got it for us. Hi, Sue.
Hello, Wilf. Hello, everyone. Here's what's happening at this hour. Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam has refuted reports that China is considering replacing her as anti-government protests continue in that territory. An article published by the Financial Times claimed the Chinese government had been drafting a plan to install an interim chief.
From the beginning of this social unrest till now, the central government has been very supportive and remains confident that I myself, my political team, and the Hong Kong SAR government, particularly the police, will be able to handle the situation.
An underground car park that was under construction in southwest China collapsed, killing 8 people and injuring 2 others. 3 other workers were able to escape and another was immediately rescued. And Michigan produce company North Bay Produce is voluntarily recalling nearly 2,300 cases and 2 bulk bins of fresh apples. They may be contaminated with listeria. They were sold in plastic bags under the brands Great Lakes and North Bay Produce, Pure Michigan. You're up to date. That's the news update this hour. Guys, I'll send it back downtown to you. Wilf?
Sue, thank you very much. We'll see you again next hour. Still to come here on Closing Bell, we've got your last chance trade. We've also just got word that Johnson & Johnson shares have been halted with news pending, and we should have that news for you any minute.
As we head to break, here's a check on bonds. U.S. Treasury yields ticking slightly lower today as the Fed kicks off its 2-day meeting. Closing Bell is back after this quick break.
The Bond Report is sponsored by PIMCO.
It's another Tuesday evening, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick to enjoy a warm Bayesian welcome.
How are you doing? Enjoying the sunshine?
Fly from London Gatwick to Barbados with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £699 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Sorry, Stevie's a bit poorly, so we won't be coming to nursery today.
Okay, thanks for letting us know.
So I brought Max instead. I packed his favourite toy. He normally naps twice a day and loves playing outside.
Like getting your money's worth? Enjoy the delicious cheeseburger. Just 99p from the McDonald's Saver menu. From 10:30am, except in selected restaurants from 11am. Price and participation may vary.
What can you get from Tesco for £1 each this Halloween?
A pumpkin.
More.
A spooky pumpkin cup.
More.
Ghostly balloons. Spine-tingling spider webs. Ghoulish plates and napkins.
More. Yes, it is scary what you can get for just £1 each this Halloween.
Tesco. Every little helps. Available in selected larger stores.
Hello? This is Dustin. I found something. Is anybody there?
We hear you, Dustin. With Sky Q, you can easily catch up on epic Netflix shows like Stranger Things and then watch award-winning Sky originals like Chernobyl. Get Sky and Netflix all in one place on Sky Q for one surprisingly low price, just £25 a month. Visit sky.com and join today. Offer ends November 14th. 18-month minimum terms. Prices may change during contract. Requires Sky Q box connected to broadband. Set up from £20. Further terms apply.
Swinging a long drive, left field. He's got one now. Kurt Suzuki gives the Nationals the lead.
The excitement of the Fall Classic is here, and you can hear every call of the 2019 World Series on TuneIn Premium. The action continues tonight with Game 6 between the NL champion Washington Nationals and American League champion Houston Astros. Listen live at 8 Eastern as 2 of Major League Baseball's most storied franchises look to bring home the World Series title. The 2019 World Series is on TuneIn Premium. Hey NFL fans, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can hear every NFL game live as it's happening, or catch it later on demand, anytime, anywhere, all season long.
We have got 21 minutes left to go. The Dow is down 20 points right now. Let's send it over to Mike Santoli for his second dashboard. Mike.
Morgan, calling this a stitch in time. The S&P 500 kind of pausing today at those record high levels. This is a look at what has happened on average this bull market after the S&P has hit a record high. So this is the average path taken in the 220 some times you've hit a record high in the S&P 500. This was happened beforehand when you reached the high. That was the path on average. And then it looks like for about a month or a few weeks, the market has just kind of flattened out, hovered near the highs, gathered itself, and then again, on average, gone to about a 5% gain in the subsequent 6 months. This is the number of days before and after the record high down below. So on average, it's a pretty positive picture, not so much an automatic switchback after you get to a new high. 89% of those periods, once you hit a high, the market was higher 6 months later. So mildly encouraging, at least, if history is going to be a guide to what happens next, guys.
Mike, I guess the other question of this would be, to what extent does it matter if all of the indices take part in this or just one of them squeezes out a record high?
There is a little suspense, right? Because we do have the Dow and NASDAQ not really agreeing just yet. I'm not sure exactly how the breakdown was in the prior 220, but I'm sure they weren't all universal in terms of, unanimous rather, in terms of all the indexes.
Okay, Mike, thanks very much. The broader market is lower for all three of the major indices. We've got 20 minutes, just under 20 minutes left to trade. We will have your last chance trade when we come back. Steve's looking at a social stock that's up more than 160% year to date.
It's another Tuesday evening, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and witness luscious scenery and calming waves. Fly from London Gatwick to St Lucia with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £739 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Floor 32. Last one. Computers sleep peacefully. Bins full of the day. Vacuum follows faithfully. A forgotten desk lamp. Switch it off. Let it rest. Outside, black softens to deep blue, hinting at the day to come. Time to pack up, to disappear once more. Sausage and egg McMuffin awaits.
Over 700 McDonald's open 24 hours. We are awake.
Hello? This is Dustin. I found something. Is anybody there?
We hear you, Dustin. With Sky Q, you can easily catch up on epic Netflix shows like Stranger Things and then watch award-winning Sky originals like Chernobyl. Get Sky and Netflix all in one place on Sky Q for one surprisingly low price. Just £25 a month. Visit sky.com and join today. Offer ends November 14th. 18-month minimum terms. Prices may change during contract. Requires Sky Q box connected to broadband. Set up from £20. Further terms apply.
Swinging a long drive, left field. He's got one now. Kurt Suzuki gives the Nationals the lead.
The excitement of the Fall Classic is here, and you can hear every call of the 2019 World Series on TuneIn Premium. The action continues tonight with Game 6 between the NL champion Washington Nationals and American League champion Houston Astros. Listen live at 8 Eastern as two of Major League Baseball's most storied franchises look to bring home the World Series title. The 2019 World Series is on TuneIn Premium.
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday for the ultimate football fan experience, featuring 7 hours of commercial-free coverage of every scoring play around the NFL.
Want to know what's happening in right now? The latest headlines are just a tap away with Fox News Talk on TuneIn. When news breaks, get up-to-the-minute coverage on developing stories from around the world. Plus, hear all the Fox shows you watch on your TV. Listen to Fox News Talk around the clock on TuneIn.
Less than 17 minutes left to go. All the major averages are lower. Steve, what's your last chance trade?
Snap. Bought it a couple of days ago, right before earnings. And if you look at it, it was an earnings beat. The market was angry at the guide, but you have revenues up year over year, almost 50%. That free cash flow deficit is actually down. Operating cash flow is up. It's a magnet towards that IPO price of $17. I think you're going to see that and higher relatively soon.
I mean, the stock's up 165% year to date. How much higher do you think this could actually go right now, especially given that it's not profitable?
I think you probably have another 10 to 20% near term in the stock. You got to remember, Twitter earnings were a weight on the whole space, so it's still recovering from that as well. And it's up since earnings day. So I think you're good here.
All right. Snap. There's your last chance trade.
Steve, thanks for joining us. Great to see you as always.
Have a good one.
Up next, uninterrupted coverage of the final minutes of trade. We'll preview what to expect from after the hour's earnings, and we will take you inside the market zone when we return.
It's another Tuesday evening. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Experience Mexican culture and relax by the Caribbean Sea. Fly from London Gatwick to Cancun with British Airways from £275 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Mate, this fan's suspension is rubbish.
Tell me about it.
Even the radio's had it.
I know, but I'd get nothing if I scrapped it.
Actually, you can get at least £2,000 off a new Ford for it.
You're kidding.
With Ford's new for old scrappage scheme, you can get between £2,000 and £6,250 off a new Ford van if you scrap an eligible vehicle with us responsibly. Also, there's 0% APR representative on Ford Acquire. Ford Commercial Vehicles. Backbone of Britain. Search Ford Scrappage. Exclusions apply. Contract and registered by 31st of December 2019 at participating dealers. Agent ownership criteria apply to scrappage vehicle. Subject to status. Free post full credit. Deposit restrictions apply.
Watford. There's nothing like coming back to a warm home after a long day at work. Especially when you've been stuck at a cold train station in rush hour for what seems like an eternity. Luckily, with Hive Active Heating, rated 5-star on Trustpilot, you can turn your heating on from wherever you are. And now with our new Hive radiator valves, you can even control your heating room by room. Search Hive Heating to buy now. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
Hey NFL fans, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can hear every NFL game live as it's happening, or catch it later on demand. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Swinging a long drive, left field. He's got one now. Kurt Suzuki gives the Nationals the lead.
The excitement of the Fall Classic is here, and you can hear every call of the 2019 World Series on TuneIn Premium. The action continues tonight with Game 6 between the NL champion Washington Nationals and American League champion Houston Astros. Listen live at 8 Eastern as two of Major League Baseball's most storied franchises look to bring home the World Series title. The 2019 World Series is on TuneIn Premium.
Looking for a new podcast to inspire your work life? On the latest edition of Pod Club, Adam Grant, host of TED Podcast Work Life, shares the pods that have blown his mind.
My all-time favorite episode of the podcast is How to Love Criticism. I went to Bridgewater, where a manager was told in front of 200 colleagues that he was the single worst manager at the company. And I came away convinced that we all have a support network, but we also need a challenge network.
Go to Podcast on TuneIn to see Adam's Pod Club picks. Get social with TuneIn. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest and greatest audio on the app. Explore exclusive content. Learn about hot new podcasts and get alerted when the big game, well, it's about to begin. Add TuneIn to your feed and be in the know when it matters most.
We've got just under 12 minutes left of the trading day. We're now in the closing bell market zone. Commercial-free coverage of all of the action as we head into the close.
CNBC senior markets commentator Mike Santoli is here to break down these crucial moments of the trading day. And today we've got Barbara Duran from BB8 Capital Partners here as well. Welcome to you both. Boeing CEO Dennis Muilenburg, meantime, grilled on Capitol Hill today following controversy surrounding its grounded 737 MAX jetliner. Muilenburg was stripped of his chairman title earlier this month, which he weighed in on during the hearing.
What's your process to hold people accountable to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Yeah. Senator, first of all, my company and I are accountable. I believe that accountability starts with me. My board took some recent actions regarding my position, which I fully support, and will allow me to focus even more on safety.
So Mike Santoli, I mean, shares have been trading higher really since he started testifying. We saw them dip down, but now they're up something like 2% on the day.
Yeah, it seemed like there wasn't a moment in the testimony that would have given investors additional reason to be concerned about the timetable, about the posture of the government toward the company. There wasn't a Tim Sloan moment, right, where you basically had this attack that made it seem like, wait, the company is in for maybe a little bit of a harsher time than we thought before. The stock itself has kind of held the bottom end of the range it's been in for a while. It seems a little tenuous, but it's actually held up okay.
Barbara, it's got another day, of course, this to get through. Are you happy with the stock at this level?
Yes. I had mentioned last week, I thought after the texting, it was time to really look at the stock. And I added positions yesterday, fortunately, although who knows, it could retest its lows. But I think, all the bad information, all the worst cases in the stock, because Boeing has not been sitting on its heels. They have been doing lots of internal changes, safety reviews. And what the CEO did today, he needed to do, to publicly, admit culpability, to apologize, to make amends, and to start to lay out everything they have been doing and will do in the future so this doesn't happen again.
S&P 500 is down 10 basis points with just under 10 minutes left to trade. Of course, any positive close would be another record high. Shares of Beyond Meat tanking today despite beating on earnings and raising its full-year sales forecast. The company's post-IPO lockup expiring today, meaning insiders can sell their stock for the first time. Beyond Meat CEO Ethan Brown appeared on Squawkbox this morning, and he was asked what he plans to do with his shares.
I'm not doing a thing. My focus is entirely on growing this business. People have asked me, do you want to do a partnership with a larger company? I have no interest in that anymore. What I'm interested in is becoming that larger company. I have a goal to make this a $40 billion company in terms of revenue.
Barbara, how much of this is competition and the fact that there might be more competitive pricing in grocery stores and elsewhere versus the stock lockup expiration?
Well, it's an interesting question because there's definitely a lot of chatter about competition, which is clearly coming in. But I think this is really more about the lockup, which suddenly hits today, after the, with the stock. So I think that's what's going on here. And I think it's actually a buying opportunity sometime in the next few days, or week or so, because the fundamentals were superb. And this is a company that is moving fast and moving hard, and it's a giant market, some 270 billion. So there's room for more than one or two players.
Mike, you look at the volumes, it's all about the lockup expiring.
30 million shares today. There's 60 million outstanding. Obviously, a lot of that gets churned around, more than once per day with the computers and everything else. But it's interesting because you're saying, what went wrong? What's happening with the stock? It's a triple from the IPO price. The fact that it ran up to $240 a share is the anomalous piece of this whole thing. Too much enthusiasm and mania running through this one stock because of the larger concept. Now it's just having this very painful reset.
I'm sure those early investors and executives will be delighted to be able to sell some stock at 80.
Yeah, you would think.
Regardless of the 200 plus it did trade out.
All right, well, the retail sector getting hit hard today as well. Let's get to Courtney Reagan, who spoke with the CEO of Lululemon today. Court.
Hi, Morgan. And we know that there is just sort of a variety of outcomes happening in retail right now. There are winners. There are losers. There are those that are doing well in China and those that are not. I sat down with Lululemon CEO Calvin McDonald and asked him if the trade war has really changed the trajectory of growth in China. Here's what he said.
We've doubled our store count from a year-to-date basis. We'll end the year at 30. We started with 15. The success of our brand, the momentum around the sweat life within China. We're very excited about what the team has done and what our potential is there.
Meantime, you have PVH CEO Manny Chirico that said not only have the Hong Kong protests really hurt business there, but so too has the ongoing trade war with China. Take a listen.
It's impacting our business directly. We're seeing sales down 30 to 40% in the last 5 or 6 months where these protests have begun in an area of the world where business has been, very strong for us there and in China. And that's really slowed down, not just the result of the protests, but the trade negotiations that have gone on.
And Chirico then went on to say that he's actually worried about the longer-term impact of American brands and what the trade war and all of the rhetoric is doing for that, as well as the positions that have been taken on either side of the Hong Kong protests. Back over to you.
Courtney, thank you. Barbara, certainly lines drawn in the sand in terms of winners and losers in retail. Meantime, I realize the consumer confidence number was a bit weaker than expected, but still high. How do you read through it as an investor right now?
In the consumer confidence, the number was a tad off, but it was really a little nick in future expectations. But present confidence is pretty good, which bodes well for Christmas. And I think there are names like Lululemon, which are going great gangbusters. Like he mentioned about China, they were up 70% and they're doubling their sales stores. So you're going to find winners like that where they have growth on all fronts: e-commerce, opening new stores, new international, new products, that you'll continue to see, good results from that company.
We've got just over 5 minutes left to trade. S&P and Dow down just fractionally. The Nasdaq's down 0.5%. We've got some breaking news on J&J. Meg Terrell's got the details.
Hi, well, Phil, of course, Johnson & Johnson's stock has been halted. We're just getting the news. The company contracting with an outside laboratory to test its baby powder, because remember, on October 18th, the FDA said it had found trace amounts of asbestos in one bottle of Johnson's baby powder, and the company voluntarily recalled that lot from the market. Now, J&J is saying that 15 new tests from that same bottle of baby powder previously tested by the FDA finds no asbestos. Additionally, the company is saying over 60 new tests of the recalled lot conducted by 2 third-party laboratories also find no asbestos. So they're saying here in their press release that the tests suggest that positive readouts for asbestos could have been possible due to lab contamination. Now, the FDA, when it put out its release, said it didn't believe there was any sign of cross-contamination. So this affected Johnson & Johnson stock quite a bit, going back to October 18th, more than $20 billion in market value. We'll see when J&J's stock reopens what it does today, but the company saying 2 independent laboratories say no asbestos found in that single bottle of baby powder flagged by the FDA. Guys, back to you.
Okay, Meg, thanks so much for that. The stock's still halted. Bob's headed to the J&J Post for us. Bob, what can you tell us?
It's not going to reopen. Here it is. There was an enormous crowd here just about a minute or two ago that's dissipated, and there are some technical reasons for this. They have to, the NYSE, under the rules here, has to give approval to resume trading by 3:55. If they don't give the approval down here to the floor, the stock doesn't open going into the close. And my understanding is they did not get it out by 3:55. They upstairs did not come down. So the company would call the NYSE, said, the news is out, you can begin trading. NYSE would call down on the floor upstairs and say, you guys can now start trading the stock. The halt's now lifted. If they don't do that by 3:55, it doesn't reopen, and it doesn't look like that happened. I can tell you, here's the DMM. I'm standing right here in front of them. The stock is not open. It's still saying news halted here. So they're not going to open Johnson & Johnson here, guys. If that changes, I'll get back to you. Back to you.
All right, Bob Pisani, thanks for that update. We do only have 3 minutes left to go here, and right now major averages are slightly lower. We are halfway through earnings season. After the bell, we're going to get results from Electronic Arts. Let's get over to Josh Lipton for a preview of that. Josh.
Morgan, for EA, here's what's expected. Q2 EPS at 86 cents on revenue of $1.25 billion. I caught up with Piper's Mike Olson just to get his take. Tells me he's going to make a beeline for what's called live services. Now, that includes in-game transactions, advertising, and subscription services. Olson's bogey for the quarter there is $380 million, and that would be a jump of 16% year over year, driven in part by in-game transactions from FIFA as well as Apex Legends. Remember, that's EA's answer to the blockbuster that is Fortnite. Guys, back to you.
All right, when you're going to bring in those results once they cross. Josh Lipton, thank you. 2 minutes left to go here. Let's send it over to Rick Santelli for a check on bonds. Rick.
With the Fed meeting tomorrow, the decision, Bank of Canada, Bank of Japan, lots of central banks, we always believe our Fed is always doing the global heavy lifting. But it might not be the case no matter what they do tomorrow. Look at the European 2-year versus the U.S. 2-year since May. What a change. European rates are moving higher. 2-year rates in Europe are at a 5-month high. Look at a chart of September 1st of R10s. Everybody's talking about 190. Yes, that's the spike. And finally, a 1 week of the dollar versus the yen. The dollar's at a 5-month high going into their meeting, which is, of course, tomorrow. Now we're going to go to Kate Rogers, where the NASDAQ has been slip sliding the last few hours right into the close.
Hi, Rick. That's right. We're down by just about 0.5% right now here at the NASDAQ. Tesla is actually the biggest loser in the NASDAQ 100 today, followed by names like Apple and Alphabet on that worse-than-expected earnings report. Big tech also weighing heavily in terms of point impact on the NASDAQ 100. It's all of those names, Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, all weighing today. Also, Apple shaving off about 20 points ahead of its earnings report tomorrow. We're going to find out how the iPhone 11 is selling. To the upside here today, it's biotech names, Mylan, Amgen, and BioMarin are all adding to those gains. I'm going to send it over to Bob Pisani now with an IC. Bob?
And Kate, just to reiterate, we've been waiting for Johnson & Johnson to reopen it on the news that their news that there is going to be there is no asbestos in the baby powder. It's not going to reopen because of internal rules here. They needed to call down on the floor by 3:55 and say the halt is lifted. You can begin trading. That did not happen. So Johnson & Johnson not reopening on that news. Overall here, kind of a flattish day. We're ending right near the lows for the day. Big story is U.S. consumer holding up and some downgrades, some commentary from the deep cyclical names about lower guidance. There's the closing bell. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is closing down 20 points at the lows of the day. S&P down 3.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the closing bell. I'm Wilfred Frost.
And I'm Morgan Brennan in for Sarah Eisen, along with Mike Santoli, CNBC, as senior markets commentator.
Let's check in on how the markets finished. Only just in the red for the Dow and the S&P. Of course, any positive close for the S&P would have been another record all-time high. We were lower by 9 basis points, a similar decline for the Dow. The Nasdaq, though, did lag, down 0.6%. Indeed, communication services and technology, the worst performing sectors on the S&P. Healthcare, the top performer.
Worth noting, the S&P 500 did set a record intraday high for the second straight day before it moved lower in the afternoon. We're halfway through earnings season. Coming up, we'll get results from Amgen, Mondelez, AMD, Electronic Arts, Yum China, FireEye, Mattel, and Edison International. We'll bring you the numbers as soon as they're released. Joining us to talk about the market day, Barbara Duran, Senior Portfolio Manager at BD8 Capital Partners, Paul Hickey, Co-Founder at Bespoke Investment Group, and of course, Mike Santoli. We're going to kick things off with you because we did end the day lower, but only fractionally.
Yeah, kind of a rounding error. I think the real message is market kind of held firm and steady at the all-time highs just about. What's interesting is Apple and Alphabet both down more than 2% on the day, S&P flat. It shows you there's still this ebb and flow, healthcare and financials taking up some of that slack. I think it's not surprising the market would basically be testing its footing right now ahead of the Fed tomorrow. We might just be on hold until we get that news.
Bob, what's your take today in terms of the sector kind of performance? Tech have been leading us to the new highs the last few trading days, clearly the big laggard today.
Right. I think we're going to continue to see this kind of back and forth as we're in a trading range. I mean, we've got the Fed coming tomorrow. I think it's widely expected they'll cut rates. We had a little bit of a disappointment perhaps today on the China trade tariff issue that may be delayed. So I think this is going to be normal. People looking for a place to put fresh cash to work.
We've got our first earnings report out. It's Amgen, and Meg Terrell's got the numbers. Hey, Meg.
The third quarter adjusted earnings per share coming in at $3.66, compared with analyst average estimate of $3.53. Revenue at $5.74 billion versus analyst average estimate of $5.63 billion. Company also raising its full year guidance on both revenue and adjusted earnings per share. Revenue now estimated to be $22.8 to $23 billion. And guys, that midpoint, it was raised by more than $250 million, which is more than the beat that they had in the third quarter. So that a true raise, yet the midpoint is still below the consensus estimate for the full year, guys. Same story for raising its adjusted earnings guidance, and Amgen is up 3% there in the after hours. Back over to you.
Meg, thank you. Paul Hickey, we are seeing Amgen trade higher right now on these results. Your initial take?
Just the headline numbers seem good. I haven't had a chance to look into the details, but Amgen's an incredibly cheap stock relative to the market and to its sector, and it pays a dividend yield of about 2.8%. So it really checks a lot of the boxes here for investors. And if you did see any weakness, we would be using it definitely as a buying opportunity.
Yeah, and Mike Santoli, when you look at what outperformed today in the market, best performing sector in the S&P was healthcare.
Yes. Merck and Pfizer had pretty clean quarters before the market opened. That gave a little bit of a tailwind. Amgen, as a stock in general, has been quietly acting a lot better. It's been working its way higher. And there were years when it looked cheap and it seemed like it was a quality name, and it didn't work. So I do think that you're starting to see a little more of a attraction to healthcare as an alternative to the deep core value stocks, just because there is a little bit of a longer-term growth profile to some of them.
Barb, do you see it that way, or would you be putting your money to work in other sectors of the S&P?
Well, I love the high growth tech, and so any of this sell-off, I would be there. But, I think Merck numbers were great. I'm long Merck. I would stay long. Pfizer was surprisingly good. And, of course, now we have Johnson & Johnson. And Amgen, I'm not sure about. I think that you're not going to see a lot of upside in the near term, but they've got such a great product line, but it's early stage clinical. So we're not even going to have proof of concept information until next year. But probably not much downside, and these numbers were encouraging.
Mike, I want to come back to the broader markets today. What happened intraday to Apple and with it kind of the rest of the tech names?
It didn't seem like there was anything in particular. It was a little bit of just a general unwind of the mega cap tech trade. Obviously, for Alphabet, it was a little bit of a staticky quarter and wasn't received all that well, but it also was at a high. Apple also at an all-time high going into a Fed meeting. It just seemed like a little bit of sort of skimming off the top of the stuff that had worked pretty well. So beyond that, it doesn't seem like it was very news-driven.
Yeah, in terms of the broader market, Paul, certainly all eyes will turn to the Fed come tomorrow. But in terms of what made markets drift lower today and into the close, it was really these headlines around U.S.-China agreement and whether we could actually see some sort of deal signed or perhaps not signed at the Chile APEC meeting in November. How much is that continuing to dictate the market right now?
I think a little bit here, but I think investors are sort of looking a little bit past this now. We've seen, we just hit all-time highs yesterday, so we got to just keep today's modest losses into check here. But it's just whatever, anytime you see even a pullback in the market, people start doubting and getting nervous. Today's the day after we just saw an all-time high in the S&P 500. We saw in consumers' confidence that more consumers think the stock market's going to go down than go up. It's very rare to see that kind of pessimism at the time when the market is in the same month that the market is hitting an all-time high. And when you look back at those prior periods, it's going back to the mid-'80s. Every single time you've seen an all-time high in the market in the same month that there were more bears than bulls, the market was higher 1 year later. So I think this kind of skepticism towards the market is healthy if you're a bull.
Mike, we haven't really mentioned it much so far. Fed meeting coming. Yields sort of holding up certainly towards the long end despite the expectation of a cut, and that's been important sentiment-wise for the market.
They have held up. A little bit of softness today, but obviously 10-year still above 1.8. That is in the high end of its recent range. And it seems as if the bond market tentatively is saying if we get one more cut, quarter point, and the signal is that they're done for a while, going to wait and see, that it's probably okay. The market's willing to buy into this hope that, in fact, there's been a kind of successful soft landing and the Fed doesn't need to be in that posture of adding more help. But we'll see. We've actually had a pattern of pretty adverse reactions to Fed meetings, especially with the market at a high in the past several months when Powell gives his press conference. So you have to keep that in mind as well.
We've got another earnings report out. It's EA, and Josh Lipton's got it for us. Josh.
So, Wilf, EA reporting EPS here of $2.89. Now, that does include $2.11 of tax benefit. It is not clear, Wilf, that is comparable to the 86 cents the Street was looking for. Revenue, though, $1.28 billion. That's a beat. The Street was looking for $1.25 billion. Just quickly looking through the segments here. Full game downloads, $180 million. That's up 22%. Live services, $573 million. That would be in-game transactions, advertising, subscription services. That also would include, by the way, Apex Legends. That's the company's answer to Fortnite. That was up 39%, and that was stronger than what the Street was looking for. Mobile, $169 million. That is down 23%. This call kicks off at 5 p.m. Eastern. Guys, back to you.
Josh, thank you. Mike Santoli, numbers certainly seem to be better than expected here, and the stock's moving higher on this. It was pretty beaten down, at least.
I was going to say, the stock is coming from a position of a little bit of weakness. It's stabilized well below the highs, but it seems as if good enough given reduced expectations.
Barb, when you talk about tech stocks, growth stocks, how closely do you watch the video game stocks?
not that closely, frankly, because they're so hit-driven. I mean, I know there's a wonderful secular story with it moving to more online, mobile, using mobile apps and all that, and then you've got more consumer interest. But again, they're just way too hit-driven for my taste. But there is a good secular story.
On the EA there, you saw a stronger than expected out of Apex, and then you're seeing the company's been in the penalty box, as Mike was saying, lowered guidance in 2 of the last 3 quarters, but importantly, last quarter they lowered guidance and the stock went up. And when you start to see that rallying on good news, that's a sign that maybe the selling is washed out. And a beat like it's looking like today, I think that would bode well for the stock and help it get it out of the funk that it's been in.
Got it. Mike Santoli, I think it looks like we're starting to get some other names roll across the tape here. But in general, if you had to pick out some themes that are emerging from earnings since we're halfway through the season, what would they be?
The main theme to me is that investors are willing to look at the whole run of numbers and not extrapolate misses to the broader market. And they're saying that it's plausible that the third quarter was the low for earnings growth and trajectory. So right now, I mean, the issue is the guidance keeps going down. The forward estimates for the fourth quarter keep going down. But right now, the market is willing to say we've had expectations beaten down enough. It's not necessarily a big concern just yet.
We have another earnings report out. It is on Mattel, and Frank Collins got that for us. Frank.
Hey there, well, shares of Mattel up almost 13% right now after a beat on the top line, a big beat on the bottom line. The company also announcing that its internal investigation of a whistleblower letter has led to the transition away from its CFO. The company saying in its earnings release that the letter, which had been sent to Mattel's outside auditors, questioned whether there were accounting errors in historical periods and whether Mattel's outside auditor was in fact independent. That investigation found that 2 periods in 2017, one was understated, the other one was overstated. Again, after a big beat on revenues and EPS, Mattel shares up more than 13%. We're going to keep digging into these files right now. Back over to you.
Thanks, Frank. Barbara, I mean, we talk about another beat-down stock. This is one of them. Turnaround story. When you see numbers like this, you hear headlines like this with changes. Turnaround in... Is it happening? Is the strategy working?
Well, that's what's going to be interesting to see, what's in these numbers. It looks on the surface, they beat on the earnings and revenue. It looks like the turnaround is working because they have a great franchise. They were trying to refocus on their core brands and also really get the manufacturing in line and get a lot of efficiency, though. It looks like it's working. So it'll be interesting to see what's behind that.
This name had missed expectations for quite a while in a row. And it's nice to change direction as well as sort out
secular decline for the category, as well as not being necessarily operationally doing all that well. So obviously also crowded short. About a fifth of the stock is sold short just because people don't think there's an easy way out in terms of the long-term challenges. Also, the third quarter, interestingly, is the big quarter for Mattel. I mean, at retail, it's the holiday quarter that matters most, but they're selling into it. So they beat in that one. It's probably encouraging. But right now, this reflex is just bringing that stock back to where it was really not that long ago.
Yeah, just to put it in perspective, Paul Hickey, I mean, stock's up 16.5% right now on the heels of these results in the after-hours trading. Your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, like the other guests were saying, it's been beaten down. I'd be interested to see the guidance for the going forward. Frozen 2 merchandise is going to be coming online in the next few months, and that's not Mattel. That's Hasbro, I believe. So, and how that's going to interact with sales of American Girl and Barbie, that's remains to be seen. I'm a father of 4 girls, so I tend to have a little bit of knowledge in this sector, and the daughters are eagerly awaiting Frozen 2.
God bless you. That sounds like it's a lot of American Girl dolls to potentially be buying outfits for. Paul Hickey, Barbara Duran, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Still to come, AT&T unveiling details of its new direct-to-consumer streaming service, HBO Max, and David Faber dives into the latest when Closing Bell returns in 90 seconds.
It's another Tuesday evening, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways. from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
London, switch to Vodafone, the UK's best mobile network, and be unlimited, because the best phones deserve the best network and our new unlimited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Max download speeds apply to unlimited data. Best network as voted by readers of trusted reviews. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/unlimited.
Swinging a long drive, left field. He's got one now. Kurt Suzuki gives the Nationals the lead.
The excitement of the Fall Classic is here, and you can hear every call of the 2019 World Series on TuneIn Premium. The action continues tonight with Game 6 between the NL champion Washington Nationals and American League champion Houston Astros. Listen live at 8 Eastern as two of Major League Baseball's most storied franchises look to bring home the World Series title. The 2019 World Series is on TuneIn Premium.
Welcome back to the closing bell. Mondelez earnings, are out, and Leslie Picker has the details for us. Leslie.
Hi, Morgan. It's a beat on both the top and bottom line for Mondelez's third quarter. On the top line, they reported $6.36 billion in revenue. That compared with the $6.34 billion that the street was expecting. So slight beat on the top line. Earnings per share on an adjusted basis came in at 64 cents per share. That beat by about 4 cents from what Wall Street was expecting. They also reported some adjusted guidance numbers, expecting organic net revenue growth now along the lines of 3.5+% for 2019, and also adjusted EPS growth of 5 to 7% for 2019. So that stock not really moving too much on these results in the after hours, down about 0.25%. Back over to you.
Leslie, thank you very much for that. Now, Bank of America out with a new survey on how the upcoming Disney Plus streaming service will impact Netflix. Just 5% say they're likely to cancel Netflix when Disney Plus launches. 20% say they will subscribe to both services, while 22% say they won't subscribe to either. 38% say they will keep Netflix but won't sign up for Disney Plus. 2% say they don't already have Netflix but will sign up for Disney Plus. And 12% say they are unsure about what they'll do. Meanwhile, we are less than 2 hours away from the unveiling of Warner Media's upcoming streaming service, HBO Max. David Faber's there with a preview. He's also going to tell us which bracket of that pie chart we just went through he will fall into. No, just joking. David, over to you.
Yeah, Wilf, I can't see it, but that was a lot of percentages there. I'm glad you got down to that 2% who have no idea what they're doing. They probably don't even know what their name is. But we know what's going on behind me, which is about an hour and 40 or so minutes from now, an important moment for AT&T and, of course, Warner Media, led by President, COO, and head of Warner, John Stankey, who will be joined during this very long presentation where they're going to be rolling out so many of the details that we are still not in possession of in terms of their streaming service, HBO Max, which will be HBO and a lot of other content, including over 10,000 hours of library, a lot of expected new shows. But keys will be, are we going to learn anything new about technology, tie-ins with the AT&T wireless brand beyond what perhaps we already assume will be the case, and most importantly, pricing, which figured so prominently the last time I was at one of these unveilings, which was back in the spring on the back lot at Disney, where they, of course, unveiled Disney Plus. And it was that price, $6.99, that certainly grabbed a lot of both the attendees there and has resonated in the marketplace ever since. So where will this service be priced? Well, it's expected to be priced far higher, of course, given what the current prices of HBO and the fact that you have all the distributors out there, such as our parent company, Comcast, who are already in the marketplace at that price. Can you really cut it? Well, probably not. How much higher can you go? It remains a key question. Or are there going to be different ways that they can link it to different service offerings to bring in a price that is at least something more compelling, perhaps, because that is and has been the key focus of so many who've been waiting for this day. But there's going to be a lot more there as well in terms of content, in terms of new shows. As I said, Stankey, he'll be joined by Bob Greenblatt, of course, who's running so much of the programming for the new Warner service, and a number of others. And so we will be attending, we will be watching closely, as will much of Wall Street, because this is seen as certainly, Wilfred and Morgan, one of the keys for the future of AT&T, which we spoke about a lot yesterday, given their new targets for 200 basis point improvement in margins and an increase in EBITDA of over $6 billion over the next 3 years. They've got to make sure that Warner remains a very strong property. And as you well know, direct-to-consumer is one of the keys for that.
Yeah, David, I mean, you talked a lot about pricing and what that's going to look like, and certainly everybody is watching that very closely right now. When you see Disney come out and partner up with Verizon and basically offer that service free for a year, I wonder what kind of similar offerings AT&T and Time Warner could make with this, and whether the bar has basically been set, given the fact that we've already gotten so many details from so many other players in this market.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, Morgan, there's an expectation that they can and will do something along the same lines that Verizon, as you said, and Disney did last week with when they broke that news, actually on Squawk on the Street with us last Monday. But beyond that are other questions in terms of ties with DirecTV, in terms of perhaps some sort of new service offerings. You know, DirecTV now known as AT&T Now, the hemorrhaging of subscribers, both at Direct and AT&T. What will be wrapped in there is another question. But yes, they do see it not just as important, obviously, for Warner's future business, but as you point out, for the wireless business. They have stuck with this idea that you can, by offering this kind of a service, continue to decrease churn. That's another question that at least some people are still wondering whether the answer is yes to.
Yeah, I think I said Time Warner, but you know what I meant. David Faber, thanks for joining us. We're looking forward to all these details as you get them. David Faber. Let's send it over to Mike Santoli for his third dashboard of the day, which is looking at media stocks.
Yeah, picking up right there, Morgan. Actually, call it a new plot thread. The market has really been following this for a little over a year. It was actually about 13 months ago. The S&P reshuffled its sectors. It created the Communication Services Index, which mashed together old media, new media, telecom. This has been the performance of the sector itself. That's the XLC, as well as Disney, AT&T, Netflix, Google. What you see as a rule is Netflix has really lost what part of the huge premium it had been given as the pioneer in this area, and to varying degrees, the incumbents like Disney, AT&T by way of Time Warner and HBO have picked up some of the slack. It really seems as if the market is essentially saying, yes, the market is big enough, streaming is, for multiple players, but Netflix is going to have to lose some of that head start value that it was granted all that time. Now, if we dial back a few more years, Netflix is still way ahead of the game. It's obviously built up a tremendous amount of value, but it is interesting how right now it's considered a little more of an even fight or a free-for-all, guys.
All right, Mike, thank you. FireEye earnings are out as well. The earnings parade continues, and Frank Holland has those details for us. Frank.
Hey there, Morgan. Shares of FireEye down just about 4% right now after it reported a beat on revenue and a beat on EPS. Exactly 1 cent above the estimate of 1 cent for earnings. It also reported higher full-year revenue guidance. Still, the stock has been trading down after hours and also all day on reports that it's pursuing a sale but struggling to find a buyer. Reports are it hired Goldman Sachs in pursuit of that sale. Still no buyer as of yet, according to those reports. Again, after a beat on revenues and EPS, shares of FireEye down about 4%.
Frank, thanks very much for that. We've got another one, AMD, and Eric Chemi's got it for us.
That's right, Will. So AMD numbers basically in line. 18 cents are the earnings. 18 cents is what the street was looking for. The revenue's a very slight miss, $1.80 billion versus the $1.81 billion that the street was looking for. That stock, as you can see, up 2.5%, 3%. That stock has doubled in the past 12 months. So continuing the momentum here, continue to stay strong. AMD earnings. Back to you.
All right, Eric Chemi, thank you. Stock's up 2.5% right now in the after-hours trade. J&J is rallying in after-hours trading as well. After new testing found no asbestos in baby powder that was previously tested by the FDA. You can see those shares are up 3.5%. We'll discuss the outlook for the stock straight ahead.
And later, we will discuss the future of media and the false political ads controversy at Facebook when we speak exclusively to Facebook co-founder Andrew McCollum.
This CNBC program.
It's another Tuesday evening, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Experience Mexican culture and relax by the Caribbean Sea. Fly from London Gatwick to Cancun with British Airways. from £275 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Swinging a long drive, left field. He's got one now. Kurt Suzuki gives the Nationals the lead.
The excitement of the Fall Classic is here, and you can hear every call of the 2019 World Series on TuneIn Premium. The action continues tonight with Game 6 between the NL champion Washington Nationals and American League champion Houston Astros. Listen live at 8 Eastern as two of Major League Baseball's most storied franchises look to bring home the World Series title. The 2019 World Series is on TuneIn Premium. NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium.
He goes to the right, throws to the end zone, caught by Fells,
15, touchdown, Green Bay!
This Thursday on Halloween night, hear the home and away call as the San Francisco 49ers visit the Arizona Cardinals at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
Back, what a block! Touchdown for Kevin Coleman going the other way! Touchdown!
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
From the TuneIn Studios, I'm Fonseca with your daily sports update. Remind you, football lives on TuneIn, and we have the San Francisco 49ers at the Arizona Cardinals. 8 p.m. Eastern this Thursday. Yeah, Halloween. We've got a little trick-or-treats for you, some special goodies. Thursday Night Football.
There's really no panic on the sideline. It's just we have to go execute, do our job, and when we do that, good things happen.
If you want to catch a game, search NFL and favorite your team. And set up reminders so you don't miss any of the action. That's your TuneIn Sports Update.
Good. Here's a swing and a drive deep to right field. Looking up. Goodbye, baseball.
Between game-winning shots and walk-off homers, follow TuneIn on social media to discover the latest and greatest in live sports.
With the 24th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft.
From live reminders that the biggest MLB games are on the air, to recommendations of the best new sports talk shows and podcasts.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be good right away in 3 years.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Welcome back to Closing Bell. Johnson & Johnson just reopening moments ago. The stock was halted last hour and remained halted through the close on news that the company found no asbestos in its baby powder after 15 new tests on a bottle previously tested by the FDA. The company says it also conducted 48 new tests from the recalled lot of baby powder through 2 third-party labs and found no asbestos. Joining us now to discuss on the phone is Jefferies analyst Jared Holtz. Jared, thanks for being with us today. Stocks trading higher right now after hours. Your thoughts on this?
Morgan, what's going on? It just has to be viewed as a significant positive. I think just in light of what we've seen the stock do the past few times that there's been a talc-related headline, every time the stock gets hammered, right? So the stock's value or the equity value has lost something like 40 to 45 billion, you could argue, on this one issue alone, and clearing by third parties is very significant in my mind. So I think the stock should react really well tomorrow.
So it's up about 4%, Jared, in after-hours trade. Do you think that it is traded lower by more than that relating to this issue recently? Of course, there's been a lot of question marks for the stock of late.
Definitely. You go back to last December and you look at how poorly the stock traded on the initial headline that the company knew about the issues related to talc. There have been a couple subsequent headlines over the past couple of months. And now you have this event, which should get the stock back up. This lost $10 to $15 billion in market cap last week, and I would think it gets roughly that back. I know it's still going to have an overhang on it until all the cases are resolved, but this is a huge positive in my mind.
So and I realize that there's a number of different things that are going on with J&J in general right now, Jared, but the baby powder piece itself, the fact that you had some of these negative headlines, there's been litigation, there's been fears, certainly it's been one of those things that's been hard to quantify the effect, the impact it would have on consumer awareness. Would you expect that these types of tests are going to be just as effective in terms of consumers understanding that there's not an issue here as the negative headlines were?
I think it should help, Morgan. I think if you look at the results that they've put up recently in consumer, there's been a lot of improvement over the past year as far as consumer segment growth at J&J. So I think consumers are already coming back to the brand. We put out something last week from the trading desk here suggesting that until these issues were resolved, given the fact that the stock traded off every time, maybe the company would be best off recalling it completely and then putting it back on the market until the FDA or another third party had inspected it. Now, they're getting a clearance today, so it's happening fairly quickly within 1 week. But all this should help to resolve the situation and get consumers back on board with the brand.
All right, Jared Holtz, thanks for joining us. J&J stock is up nearly 4% right now in the after-hours trading.
Boeing CEO was grilled on Capitol Hill earlier today.
Why didn't we react? Why didn't we ground that aircraft a lot sooner so that another tragedy wouldn't happen?
What these chief pilots described as egregious and crazy.
You should take, offense to the fact that people say it's a great company not being run correctly.
Up next, we'll have more highlights on how the testimony could impact Boeing and the future of CEO Dennis Muilenburg. We're back in a couple minutes.
ServiceNow put our workflows in the cloud. This changes.
It's another Tuesday evening, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Reach the top of Mount Teede or relax on a sandy beach. Fly from London Gatwick to Tenerife with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £349 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Watford, it's chilly outside, and you're staying in with your feet up, and they can stay up. Because with Hive Active Heating, you can set the perfect temperature without even lifting a finger.
Alexa, ask Hive to boost my heating.
And by never having to heat an empty home, you could save up to £120 a year on your heating bill.
Alexa, play my Nice and Toasty playlist.
Search Hive Heating to buy now. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
Swinging a long drive, left field. He's got one now. Kurt Suzuki gives the Nationals the lead.
The excitement of the Fall Classic is here, and you can hear every call of the 2019 World Series on TuneIn Premium. The action continues tonight with Game 6 between the NL champion Washington Nationals and American League champion Houston Astros. Listen live at 8 Eastern as two of Major League Baseball's most storied franchises look to bring home the World Series title. The 2019 World Series is on TuneIn Premium.
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday for the ultimate football fan experience, featuring 7 hours of commercial-free coverage of every scoring play around the NFL.
You're listening to TuneIn, where you can hear all the audio you love in one place. Live NFL games, the hottest music, breaking news, and podcasts. Push play and go about your day, only on TuneIn.
Start hearing more of what you want. Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Welcome back. Time for a CNBC News update with Sue Herrera. Hi, Sue.
Hello, Will. Hello, everyone. Here's what's happening at this hour. Republicans and Democrats in the Senate are closely watching the House impeachment inquiry. The House is expected to vote on the inquiry resolution on Thursday.
The Speaker is going to lay out a process which will outline what the House is going to do. We'll all be looking at that to see if it meets the normal due process standards you would expect to be provided to the president and his team.
Trump may want to shut down the government again because of impeachment, an impeachment inquiry. He always likes to create diversions. I hope and pray he won't want to cause another government shutdown because it might be a diversion away from impeachment.
Jimmy Carter will teach Sunday school this weekend. The Marantha Baptist Church originally said the former president would take the weekend off as he recovers from a fall which resulted in a pelvic fracture. But Mr. Carter changed his mind and decided he felt well enough to teach. and we're glad to hear that. That's the news update this hour. Guys, I'll send it back downtown to you. Morgan?
We are glad to hear that, Sue. Thank you. Sue Herrera. The earnings have been coming in fast and furious after the bell. Electronic Arts higher after stronger than expected sales. AMD matching on the bottom line and missing on the top line. Mondelez and Amgen both lower despite better than expected earnings. And Mattel soaring after a big earnings beat. The toy maker also announcing a new CFO and an end to its whistleblower investigation into accounting issues. And you can see right there, stock is up, well, now about 2.5%, it looks like.
Boeing CEO came under fire from lawmakers today after the safety of the 737 MAX came into question once again. Phil LeBeau was at the hearing, and he joins us now with more. Phil.
Well, one of the big themes today is whether or not Boeing has been forthright when it comes to the 737 MAX. And there were more than a few senators who either came out and said point blank, no, you have not been, or suggested that Boeing has been hiding the truth about the MAX for several months.
You have told this committee and you've told me half-truths over and over again, including in that meeting. This is why I am so upset. You have not told us the whole truth, and these families are suffering because of it.
Those families, they were relatives and friends of victims who died in the two 737 MAX crashes. They were there in the Senate hearing room today with posters showing the faces of those who were victims in one of the two crashes for the 737 MAX. Dennis Muhlenberg, for his part, stuck to his script, which is essentially saying Boeing is committed to safety and oversight.
You all know the people of Boeing. These are 150,000 people that every day come to work because they have an important mission. They are honest. They are resolute in their efforts. They are committed to safety. That's our culture. And every employee at Boeing, that's just how we think about the work we do. And we're going to continue to improve as a company. I'm not saying we've done everything right. As I've noted today, we've gotten some things wrong.
We will hear much the same from Dennis Muhlenberg tomorrow when he goes in front of another committee, this time with the House. Take a look at shares of Boeing. Guys, his testimony today did not knock the shares down. In fact, they're up today, more than 2.3%. And that's largely, I think, because people are saying, look, the backlog is not changing on this plane. It's still, a bad story for Boeing, but they're going to get these planes eventually delivered. That's the belief amongst investors.
All right. Phil LeBeau, thank you. Yum China earnings are out now as well, and we're going to get to Frank Holland for those. Frank.
Hey there, Morgan. Shares of Yum China pretty much flat right now after the company reported a miss on the top line and a beat on the bottom line. Comparable store sales fell more than 1% below estimates. Its KFC franchises in China falling below estimates, almost 1%. Its Kentucky Fried Chicken Pizza Hut franchise is falling about 0.5% below estimates. The company also says that higher labor cost and chicken cost impacted margins. Again, shares of Yum China pretty much flat now after a miss on the top line and a beat on the bottom line. Back over to you.
All right, Frank, thank you. Up next, Facebook co-founder Andrew McCollum discusses the changing media landscape and whether there is enough demand for all of the new streaming services set to launch.
CNBC News Up.
It's another Tuesday evening. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Experience Mexican culture and relax by the Caribbean Sea. Fly from London Gatwick to Cancun with British Airways from £275 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Hey, you. Yes, you. We didn't make Nature Valley nut butter biscuits so you could just sit and munch them on the train. Not when there's a whole forest out here to explore. Isn't that right? Go get it! Delicious whole grain biscuits with a real nut butter filling. Nature Valley Nut Butter Biscuits. Get out more.
NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium.
He does to the right, throws to the end zone, caught by Fells!
15, touchdown! 10, 5, touchdown, Green Bay!
This Thursday on Halloween night, hear the home and away call as the San Francisco 49ers visit the Arizona Cardinals at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
Back, what a block! Touchdown for Tevin Coleman going the other way! Touchdown!
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Swinging a long drive, left field. He's got one now. Kurt Suzuki gives the Nationals the lead.
The excitement of the Fall Classic is here, and you can hear every call of the 2019 World Series on TuneIn Premium. The action continues tonight with Game 6 between the NL champion Washington Nationals and American League champion Houston Astros. Listen live at 8 Eastern as two of Major League Baseball's most storied franchises look to bring home the World Series title. The 2019 World Series is on TuneIn Premium.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Want to know what's happening in right now? The latest headlines are just a tap away with Fox News Talk on TuneIn. When news breaks, get up-to-the-minute coverage on developing stories from around the world. Plus, hear all the Fox shows you watch on your TV. Listen to Fox News Talk around the clock on TuneIn.
What if you could keep up with cable news even when you're on the go? With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to MSNBC live without any commercial interruptions. All of the news, none of the ads. Listen live on TuneIn Premium today.
Welcome back to Closing Bell. It was a parade of earnings after the bell today in the past 39 minutes, and you can see all of those movers right now on that television screen. Electronic Arts is up was about 1% right now. AMD has actually just turned lower. That's down about 0.5%. Mondelez is also trading about 1% lower. Amgen is down fractionally. The biggest mover right now on the heels of earnings is Mattel, after a beat, announcing a new CFO. Also, the end to that whistleblower situation at the toy maker. One to watch, especially as we go into another trading day tomorrow.
It is a big week for media, with the HBO Max Investor Day kicking off in less than 2 hours. The company is expected to unveil more details about the streaming service, including the price. We're also counting down to the launch of Apple TV Plus this Friday. Joining us now to discuss the changing landscape in media, Andrew McCollum, Philo CEO and Facebook founding member. Philo is a skinny pay TV bundle that also includes some 50 channels. Very good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk. I know I was told this earlier. Is it Philo or Philo?
It's Philo. It's named after Philo Farnsworth, the inventor of television.
My apologies for that. So let's talk about that first of all, because essentially it is a bundle of traditional TV channels just delivered over the top as opposed to down a cable. How's it going for you? And do you think that means everything will be once again bundled up, but even though there's been some disruption in between?
Yeah, things are going very well for us. I think what you're seeing play out in the marketplace today is that, actually TV has never been better. We're in a golden age of television. The content is as good as it's ever been. What's really broken in the current TV ecosystem is the price, the packaging, the product. And, that's where we're really trying to innovate and offer something new. We offer a selection of 58 channels. They're all entertainment, lifestyle, knowledge-focused, no sports, no broadcast. So a dramatically lower price. It's only $20 a month. And so it's a really different option out there for people who are looking for something different from what traditional TV has given them. And it also, works on any device you have. You can sign up in under 10 seconds. It gives you an unlimited DVR. So it's sort of like TV with superpowers.
This week we're talking all about the new launches, whether it's HBO Max, Disney Plus, of course, the ongoing battles between the likes of Netflix and Amazon Prime. Do you think all of those competitors will one day, perhaps one day soon, be offered in bundles together, even though right now we're focusing on the fierce rivalry between them?
I do think that over time you'll see a trend towards more bundling. I think the past 5 years in the TV landscape, you've seen a lot of fragmentation, and there really is a a limit to how many services consumers are willing to sign up for individually and have separate apps and separate logins and separate billing details. And also the marketing cost of marketing all those separate services is a huge expense that will either lead to higher prices or make them unattractive as businesses. So we really believe that bundling can be valuable to both consumers and content providers as long as you're doing it in an intelligent way, as long as you're offering content that makes sense together and giving people access to more for a reasonable price. So I think even with these SVOD services, I think there's a good chance that in the future they will become part of bundles themselves, or at least available within other services.
Now, I know Philo doesn't offer or create content, I should say. We've seen content costs skyrocket in general. How important do you think original programming is to this landscape overall, especially as all of these new services launch?
I think if you're trying to go it alone with a true direct-to-consumer model where you're creating the app and delivering all the content end-to-end and trying to market and attract subscribers for that service, that original programming is really vitally important for attracting attention. And that's why you're seeing this escalating battle between the new SVOD entrants in the space trying to create more and more attractive and exciting original content. It's very different in the traditional world for a service like ours, where the brands and channels we carry are very well known to people. It creates a slightly different incentive model. For us, we have a different approach. We're trying to build the best platform and the best technology to deliver the best content experience no matter where the content comes from. And so I think it leads you to a different approach. I do think the escalating war over original content is going to reach a head soon.
And Andrew, lastly, before we let you go, as a co-founder of Facebook, I have to get your thoughts on that company. I mean, we've seen some of the other co-founders and early employees of the company, whether it's Chris Hughes, whether it's Chamath Palihapitiya, talked about this on our air yesterday, be a little more critical of Facebook, especially given all the scrutiny that it's facing and all of these issues that it's trying to wrap its arms around right now. How do you see it?
Well, I mean, I really think this is something the entire tech industry is sort of getting their arms around now, which is that for a period of time, there really, it's fair to say, was not a lot of scrutiny on some of these companies. They were a lot smaller, they were growing, and they weren't necessarily seen as the giant, powerful forces in our society that they are today. And so I think that, in the last several years, you've really seen that change. There's been a lot more scrutiny and look at what the effect really is and the power that they have. And I think it's a productive conversation. It's hard to know where it will lead, but I think it's good that we're having it and engaging in that.
Do you still own a lot of stock yourself, or have you sold out fully?
Well, I still am a big believer in the company and the folks that lead it. So I would say that. I'd say that.
Okay, fair enough, Andrew. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Still to come here on Closing Bell in the week ahead, we'll move to the content side. Live interviews with Hollywood producer Brian Grazer, and then Friday, a special one. Legendary media mogul Logan Roy. Well, actually the actor Brian Cox, who plays him in the media business in real life, the one depicted, of course, in the show Succession.
You're so excited about this, aren't you?
I am, although I'm rather sad I'm not actually going to be here on Friday, but I will be watching for sure, as always when I'm not here. And Close the Bell, back in a couple minutes.
Okay.
Let's go.
It's another Tuesday evening, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick and explore tropical rainforests. Fly from London Gatwick to Costa Rica with British Airways from £218 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Hey NFL fans, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can hear every NFL game live as it's happening, or catch it later on demand, anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Swinging a long drive, left field. He's got one now. Kurt Suzuki gives the Nationals the lead.
The excitement of the Fall Classic is here, and you can hear every call of the 2019 World Series on TuneIn Premium. The action continues tonight with Game 6 between the NL champion Washington Nationals and American League champion Houston Astros. Listen live at 8 Eastern as two of Major League Baseball's most storied franchises look to bring home the World Series title. The 2019 World Series is on TuneIn Premium.
From the TuneIn Studios, I'm Fonseca with your daily sports update. The World Series is today, Game 6. First pitch is at 8 p.m. Eastern. The Nationals at the Houston Astros.
Well, we fought all year long to get here. We played playoff games all year long to get here. So we got a lot of fight in us left. But we'll come back ready to go on Tuesday.
If you want to catch that game, it is today. First pitch, 8 p.m. Eastern. Nationals, Astros. Here on TuneIn.
Hello, ghoulies. We have all the treats. This October, there's no better place to listen to your favorite audio than on TuneIn. From the NFL, the World Series, and the start of the NHL and NBA seasons, to the latest developments in the 2020 election from MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News Talk. Sports, news, podcast, music, and more. Soundtrack your Halloween with TuneIn.
There has been evidence that if you deploy a lot of capital in the consumer space, you can leave your competitors behind, and over time, you will turn that business more profitable as you grow. Hasn't worked out in every industry. Hasn't worked out in ride-hailing, for example, around the world. Hasn't worked out in, I guess, in the take long-term leases up front and then make money on a day-by-day basis business. Money in the right hands, the right founders, right potential long-term platforms works, but it doesn't work willy-nilly on every pet walking and hotel room renting website.
That was Palo Alto Network's chairman and CEO Nikesh Arora taking a swipe at his old company SoftBank when he sat down with their own John Fort this afternoon at the inaugural CNBC Technology Executive Council Summit right here in New York, bringing together some of the world's most innovative tech leaders. You can head over to cnbc.com/TEC for all of our coverage.
Let's get over to Mike for the final installment of today's Dashboard. Mike.
Well, some signs of some slightly fraying confidence. We got the new consumer confidence numbers this morning. It was a little bit soft, but still in the high end of the recent range. Look at the long-term chart here. The thing that has people's focus is you have obviously a little bit of a downtrend from the recent highs and some kind of congestion below the highs. It actually looks a little bit similar to right here. That was early 2016 when there was fears of a recession, but we never did get into a recession. The big concern, of course, is if you see confidence really fall away from a high. That's what happens typically before these shaded areas, which is recession. So we have not seen that just yet, so perhaps just consolidating. I want to look at one subcomponent of the survey. Paul Hickey mentioned this earlier. This is the net number of respondents saying that it's a good time to invest in stocks, effectively, the outlook for the stock market. You see it nets out to about 0. It's a relatively cautious or bearish sign, especially with the market at a high. If you look in the late 90s, consistently people thought it was a good time to invest in stocks. That was new to the end of a bull market. Even before 2007, it seems like right now people are unduly cautious about the market, given the fact that the market itself is at a record high. These are non-professionals or not active investors, so typically it's more a contrarian signal than a confirming one for the market.
All right, Mike, thank you. Still ahead, big tech on deck. Both Facebook and Apple set to report after the bell tomorrow. The key things every investor needs to know when Closing Bell returns.
CNBC Technology Executive Council.
It's another Tuesday evening, yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Experience Mexican culture and relax by the Caribbean Sea. Fly from London Gatwick to Cancun with British Airways from £275 each way based on a return fare. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun with British Airways. Incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium.
He goes to the right, throws to the end zone, caught by Fells,
15, 10, 5, touchdown, Green Bay!
This Thursday on Halloween night, hear the home and away call as the San Francisco 49ers visit the Arizona Cardinals at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
Back, what a block! Touchdown for Tevin Coleman going the other way! Touchdown!
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Swinging a long drive, left field. He's got one now. Kurt Suzuki gives the Nationals the lead.
The excitement of the Fall Classic is here, and you can hear every call of the 2019 World Series on TuneIn Premium. The action continues tonight with Game 6 between the NL champion Washington Nationals and American League champion Houston Astros. Listen live at 8 Eastern as two of Major League Baseball's most storied franchises look to bring home the World Series title. The 2019 World Series is on TuneIn Premium.
Catch the latest news as it happens with MSNBC on TuneIn. From American politics to global events, when breaking news hits, you'll never miss a moment again. Search MSNBC on TuneIn to hear the latest.
Get social with TuneIn. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest and greatest audio on the app. Explore exclusive content. Learn about hot new podcasts and get alerted when the big game, well, it's about to begin. Add TuneIn to your feed and be in the know when it matters most.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the man bleeds for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Pump fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA today to start listening.
Welcome back. We've got a market flash on Edison International. Eric Chemmy's got it for us. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Wilf. That's right. So Edison International, the utility company, on its earnings call right now, saying that the local fire department outside of Los Angeles, the Ventura County Fire Department, said that its equipment was most likely the reason for the Woolsey fire outside Los Angeles a year ago that cost billions of dollars in damage. That's why the stock dropped about 20% before rallying. It's still down about 4.5% right now. So that's from its earnings call. It does think that it is responsible for a major fire in Los Angeles a year ago. Back to you, Wilf.
Eric, thank you for that. We'll keep an eye on the stock price after hours.
Up next, it's another huge day for earnings tomorrow with Apple and Facebook topping the list of things for investors to watch. A preview of those key reports when Closing Bell comes back.
There's golf. And there's the golf lifestyle.
From the TuneIn Studios, I'm Fonseca with your daily sports update. The World Series is today, Game 6. First pitch is at 8 p.m. Eastern. The Nationals at the Houston Astros.
So we fought all year long to get here. We played playoff games all year long to get here. So we got a lot of fight in us left. But we'll come back ready to go on Tuesday.
If you want to catch that game, it is today. First pitch, 8 p.m. Eastern. Nationals Astros, right here on TuneIn. Looking for a new podcast to inspire your work life? On the latest edition of Pod Club, Adam Grant, host of TED Podcast Work Life, shares the pods that have blown his mind.
My favorite guest we've had on the show so far is probably Malcolm Gladwell, because he enjoys questioning his own thinking and also challenges me to question mine. And if I had to list 3 reasons you should check out Work Life, they would be 1, it's fun, 2, you'll learn something, and 3, you can take away tips that might make your work life a little bit better.
Go to Podcast on TuneIn to see Adam's Pod Club picks.
What if you could keep up with cable news even when you're on the go? With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to MSNBC live without any commercial interruptions. All of the news, none of the ads. Listen live on TuneIn Premium today.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Does your broker offer more than just free trades? Fidelity has 0 commissions for online U.S. equity trades and ETFs, plus 0 minimums to open a brokerage account. With value like this, there are 0 reasons to invest anywhere else. Fidelity.
Consistency delivers. Time and time again.
Threadneedle Investments.
As your life grows, so do your needs. And with Bank of America and Merrill, the benefits you get can grow too. As a preferred rewards member, you can enjoy priority service and exclusive discounts, so your growing life can be more rewarding too. What would you like the power to do?
Stand up if you are a first-generation college student. Stand up if you're a mother. If you are actively deployed, a veteran, or you're in a military family, please stand. The world in which we live equally distributes talent, but it doesn't equally distribute opportunity, and paths are not always the same.
I'm so proud of you, Dad.
I will tell you this, Southern New Hampshire University can change the whole trajectory of your life.
Will the Fed three-peat an interest rate cut? And could Chairman Powell signal a future pause? Instant market reaction and Chairman Powell's first remarks on Power Lunch. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern on CNBC.
Looking ahead to tomorrow, the Fed wrapping up its two-day meeting with a crucial decision on rates. We'll also get earnings from Apple, Facebook, Starbucks, Lyft, and more. Let's start with a preview of Apple. Josh Lipton has that for us. Josh.
So, Morgan, here is what we expect from Apple. Q4 EPS of $2.84 on revenue of $63 billion. Be basically flat year over year on the top line. Big metric investors really want, though, guidance for the all-important holiday quarter. Right now, the street is at $87 billion. That would be a jump of 3% year over year. The stock finished in the red today, but it has soared higher this year, now up some 70% since its low in early January. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, some interesting intraday action today. Josh, will keep an eye on it. Thank you. We also have Facebook reporting tomorrow. Julia's got a preview of that. Julia.
Well, if investors are expecting Facebook to move past headlines about regulatory scrutiny and for the company to continue to expand its user base, while Instagram is expected to help it grow its advertising revenue. Revenue for the quarter is projected to grow over 6% to over 26% to $17.4 billion, while earnings are expected to return to growth, up nearly 9% to $1.91 per share. Now, Facebook shares are down 6.5% since the all-time high the stock hit ahead of its last earnings. Remember, it was last quarter when the company announced a second charge to cover the FTC's $5 billion fine and disclosed an FTC investigation. Back over to you.
Julia, thank you very much for that reminder. We closed down just 8 basis points on the S&P today, though the Nasdaq down 0.6%. We're out of time. That does it for Closing Bell.
Fast Money begins right now.
Live from the NASDAQ market site overlooking New York City's Times Square, this is Fast Money. I'm Melissa Lee. Our traders on the desk are Pete Najarian, Brian Kelly, Dan Nathan, and Guy Adami. Grub Flub, shares melting more than 40% after quarterly results. The desk will grab some napkins, see if there's anything left to sop up. Plus, ahead of tomorrow's highly anticipated decision day, Jim Bianco says the Fed is playing with fire. We will discuss that. But we begin tonight with Boeing. CEO Dennis Muhlenberg getting grilled by lawmakers on Capitol Hill today over the 737 MAX crashes. Let's get straight to Phil LeBeau in D.C. with all the highlights. Hey, Phil.
Melissa, the senators blasted Dennis Muhlenberg time and again on a wide variety of issues. Some accused Boeing and the CEO of not being straight with them, outright lying to them in terms of certain questions about the 737 MAX. Others basically said to him, "You're the CEO. How could you let this happen?"
You're the CEO. The buck stops with you. Did you read this document? And how did your team not put it in front of you, run in with their hair on fire, saying, we got a real problem here?
Those pilots never had a chance. These loved ones never had a chance. They were in flying coffins.
I would walk before I was to get on a 737 MAX. I would walk. There's no way.
just a few of the comments from senators asking Dennis Muhlenberg and also offering their opinions in terms of the 737 MAX. For Dennis Muhlenberg's part, he said time and again, look, safety is at the core of our mission. We are committed to making sure that the MAX is safe when it returns to flight and that the company makes changes that are necessary to ensure that this never happens again. And guys, as you take a look at shares of Boeing, yeah, this stock came back a little bit today, and people are saying, well, does that mean that Dennis Muhlenberg did a good job on the Hill? No. It simply means that investors are looking at this saying, how much worse can it get? What's the worst that can happen for Boeing? Yeah, maybe this plane doesn't return to service by the end of the fourth quarter, but it will at some point, and there is a backlog of planes. And I know you guys have talked about this at length. I think that's what the investors were looking at today, saying, get past the headlines, get past a bad day for Dennis Muhlenberg on the Hill, and focus on that backlog of 4,400 737 MAXs.
That all implies, Phil, that Congress will put the blame squarely on Dennis Muhlenberg and Boeing and not necessarily on the FAA, which might cause the 737 MAX to be grounded for even longer and or change certification processes.
Melissa, I think you're spot on with that. I think that the pressure is on the FAA, and that when they finally decide, okay, we've got all the material that we need from Boeing for the recertification of the MAX, how long does it take for them to do this? Because they were embarrassed by what happened a year ago when the rest of the world grounded this plane while they repeatedly said, the data's not there, the data's not there. And now, everything that's come out in the last year, I mean, it's clear that the FAA is going to have to show Capitol Hill, yes, we understand our role as a regulator is not just to rubber stamp this plane.
And I mean, this also assumes that, well, regulators around the world, I'm assuming, watched this testimony as well.
Oh, yeah.
They can be even tougher than the FAA
Sure.
in terms of getting that MAX recertified.
Sure, and we'll see that with Europe. Now, they're not real far behind the FAA. They've basically said, look, we're within weeks when the FAA signs off on it, we're probably just a little bit behind them. But China's the one to watch. And for all the reasons that we've talked about, Melissa, that this goes beyond just the certification process in China, there could be a political element of this involved as well.
All right, Phil, thank you. Phil LeBeau.
You bet.
With today's testimony. Tomorrow, of course, Muhlenberg returns to the Hill for the House. In the meantime, what Phil said was very interesting. Investors are assuming that the worst may be behind Boeing. Do you agree?
For today, they did. And listen, I thought the stock would trade and test 321. I think that was the August low on October 21st. I think it traded 324 thereabouts on 15 million shares, which is about 4 times normal volume. So for the short term, at least, you have what we say is a pretty decent tradable bottom. But I'm hard pressed to believe, given everything we've heard, that the headline risk still doesn't exist. And the FAA, for them to certify this plane going forward, they're going to have to go through things in the most rigorous way in the history of the agency. Mm-hmm. So I'm hard pressed to believe that we're on the other side of the bad news flow. So my take is, rally should be sold. I think we go lower from here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, unfortunately, the unknowns are just not quantifiable right here. And I think that one of the senators made this point. He said, I would walk before I would get on that. That's going to be an issue that a lot of carriers are going to have to deal with just from a PR standpoint when they finally agree to take those planes. Will customers want to fly on them? We just don't know. And this is a long time coming. And I just look at the estimates. Sales last year were $101 billion, expected to be $83 billion. And then I think consensus has them going up to 123. That's assuming that all these planes that are being built are going to be sold again. Boeing may end up holding billions and billions and billions of dollars of these planes before the carriers buy them again. And that's the point about China, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, and the stock's traded this way all year. For the better part of 10 months, we've been in this range between 320 and 380, let's call it. And effectively what the investors have been doing is getting optimistic. Remember, it was supposed to be first or second quarter of this year was going to come out. Then it was going to be September, and it keeps getting pushed back and pushed back. So we're in this optimistic phase, but I think I'm with everybody else here. You get up to 360, 380, somewhere in that range, I'd be selling it because I do think it's going to be a long time. We don't know what kind of liability is there. We don't know how customers are going to respond to this. And then what are you buying here? Right? What are you trying to trade? What's the theme? You're trying to trade the airline industry, but you're also trying to trade defense. You have better ways to do that. You could buy UTX. You could buy Delta Airlines if you want to try to play those things and have none of the headline risk that Boeing has.
But you might also be trying to trade a duopoly. And that's
Right.
a dynamic that exists here that's different from any other crisis that you can point to and try and make a comparison to. I was trying to make the comparison to Wells Fargo, but it's completely different in that you've only got Airbus and you've only got Boeing.
Which is the interesting part, and Dan brings up the unknowns, you bring up all the liabilities, and I don't disagree with that. And that's why I've had a really hard time. I've looked at this so many different times, Mel, where I've said, you know what, I think I'm going to buy it if it gets to this level. And I haven't done it. And why haven't I done it? Even with the duopoly, there's still an issue out there of we don't know what the actual impacts will be. I mean, I think the one thing that we can look towards in the future will be, I think they will eventually get that free cash flow back. I think there's a lot of things they'll get back. We know about the backlog. Their competitor has an unbelievable backlog. So where are people going to go if they jump out of Boeing? Are they really going to go to the competitor? Because if so, they're in a multi-year line, right? I mean, so there's that's what makes this so interesting, and I think that's why the stock hasn't cracked. Otherwise, I think it should have been a 285 stock like it was a year ago December. Never got down to those levels again.
Key word is crack. I mean, I've just pulled up the BP chart from 10 years ago, and I'm not saying that this is equivalent to what happened in the Gulf in there, but that stock went from $60 to below 30 in a matter of, months or something like that. And then at some point you can say, listen, all these unknowns, the same thing, the sentiment's horrible. If I'm buying this for 10 years out, will I be okay? And you say probably yeah, and it's worked out okay at some point. This one with Boeing, we just don't. It hasn't cracked. To your point, it hasn't.
The resilience is the fact that I think stands out. I mean, it's been so resilient.
I think saying that this is the deal of the century because of the duopoly or whatever you're saying.
There's a lot of stocks out there to trade, and so when there's this much confusion on trying to figure this one out,
why try?
Right. It makes sense to
Here's
maybe
one
look around.
question I asked yesterday, but you weren't here yesterday.
No, I was gallivanting.
You're gallivanting around. I don't know what town. Here's the question: if Dennis Muhlenberg steps down, gets kicked out, whatever. Does the stock go up or down?
In my opinion, I don't think that has any effect at all.
Really?
I mean, maybe knee-jerk it goes higher, but I mean, if you're looking for a fall person on the back of this to rally the stock, I think you're looking at the wrong places. And I understand what everybody says in terms of the stock hasn't broken down in a meaningful way, but consider this. I mean, you've talked about the duopoly. Stock has been bolstered by the fact that the S&P 500 is at an all-time high. So you've had tremendous market tailwinds behind this, and it's still down from 450-ish back in February of last year, right? So, I mean, it's not like it has been punished. I think our point is we're surprised it hasn't been punished enough. But if the broader market were to ever to roll over for whatever reason, I don't think Boeing would be, I don't think they'd be safe from that move.
Okay. For more on Boeing, let's bring in Ernie Arvey, the president of Air Insight Group. He's previously called for Muhlenberg to step down. Ernie, great to have you back.
Thanks, Melissa. Nice to be here again.
What to invest? I mean, if you take a look at the stock today, the stock is up. We were talking about that. What do you think investors should know about this process that Boeing has in front of it to get the 737 MAX back in the air?
Well, I think the process has been delayed several times. They still haven't made the final submissions to the FAA, although if we believe Mr. Muhlenberg, they're getting closer. But that still will take the FAA another 5 to 6 weeks to analyze after they get Boeing's final documentation. That puts us into next year or late into December, and the airlines will take probably 1 to 2 months each to get back into service. So the earliest we see is right about the end of the first quarter of next year, and more probably the second quarter, because there are a number of issues that have come up during that process that Boeing is addressing, as well as the fundamental problem with the MACS system.
People are so focused on Boeing and what Boeing can do to get that plane back in the air, Ernie, but in terms of the pressure on the FAA and the process by which it certifies aircraft, do you think that will have to change permanently and that could actually cause a longer path before the MAX gets back in the air?
I think the process will change. I think the review we've had with international regulators will be thorough enough that once the submission is made, the recertification process will probably go fairly smoothly. But for the next aircraft, for the 777X, for the new middle market aircraft that Boeing is doing, I think for those programs we'll see much more scrutiny from the FAA as the process changes. And I think the hole in the process right now is the Organizational Delegation Authority, the ODA, in which Boeing employees can certify certain requirements. And where they used to have a direct link to the FAA, now they report to the FAA through Boeing managers. So that clear voice of potential whistleblowing to the FAA has been eliminated. And that needs to change.
Hey, Ernie, it's Brian Kelly. So is there precedent for customer acceptance of this? How long do you think it'll take for somebody, for a client or a passenger to want to step back on to one of these planes?
We don't have a lot of data on that. We have to go back to 1979 and the DC-10, and that took about 6 months for passengers to get back on board that aircraft and have similar load factors. But that was before social media. So we don't have the word of mouth that we have today through the internet. We don't have Facebook. We don't have groups that could potentially put together an internet boycott of the airplane. So we don't yet know the answer. It could take a year before people get back on board this airplane or longer. And if airlines find lower load factors, that's an economic cost to them versus the competing aircraft, and that's going to reduce the value of the Boeing aircraft to them.
We're just about out of time, Ernie, but we were talking about how investors are happy to stay in the stock, at least for now, because it is a duopoly out there. And I'm wondering, in your experience, how solid is that duopoly, and have you seen instances where airlines could actually switch to a different plane by a different plane maker?
The duopoly is pretty solid. It's difficult to switch if you're a major carrier with a large fleet, because there just aren't 100 delivery positions at Airbus available next year. You've got to get in line and wait 5 or 6 years. But for the smaller carriers who buy 2s and 3s, those can happen, and Airbus can certainly increase capacity. It's putting another line in for the A220. It's got its Alabama line ramping up. There is capacity in the system at the margins, but you're right. There simply is no alternative to Airbus or Boeing at this point until the Chinese and the C919 enter the market with full production, which is probably not till 2025.
Ernie, thanks for your analysis. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Melissa.
Ernie RV. All right, so
so we had last week there was a lot of downgrades, right? And I think the bear case was that they're only going to be producing about like low 40s per month, and the bull case was at somewhere upwards of the high 50s or something like that. And talking about getting that free cash flow back to those prior levels in the low to mid 40s, it's just a disaster for a couple of years, and that's one of the reasons why you bought this stock, because of that backlog, because of the free cash flow generation, and therefore the valuations just came down dramatically if you looked at a lot of the notes. So if they can't get above 50 anytime early 2020, it's just a no touch, I think, right now.
Yeah, I think if you're buying Boeing here for a trade for 15 to 20% move, you're betting on no further headline risk, which I don't think any of us can say with any degree of certainty, and you're also betting on the fact that the market's going to continue to grind higher. So if you believe those two things, there's absolutely upside back to that 375 level, which if you go back and look, that's where we broke down from in the late winter, early spring of this year.
You just don't believe it.
I know I don't believe it.
And
I
you don't
wouldn't
believe
make that.
it.
Well, I just think it's bad.
it.
I think it's bad risk reward, right?
Yeah.
So guys talking about the fact that if the market goes up, this stock goes up with it. Well, why wouldn't I just buy the market? Because I'm taking the exact same risk, and if there's a headline that, wait a second, this gets delayed for 6 months or a major carrier changes, I don't know what's going to happen. Boeing goes down and the market could still go up. So it's a lose-lose. It's just terrible risk reward in my view.
The key is that we don't have a gun to our heads to have to make this trade, so there are other places we can make it and still have the same types of exposure.
Coming up, Amgen and AMD both reporting earnings after the bell. We'll give you the highlights, plus the market waiting on tomorrow's Fed decision. But Jim Bianco says the Fed is playing with fire. He'll tell us what he sees and why investors might get burned. We're live from Times Square in New York City. Much more Fast Money after this.
Grubhub, America's leader in food delivery.
It's another Tuesday evening. Yet another cold day. So ditch the British winter and chase the sun across the globe with British Airways from London Gatwick. Reach the top of Mount Teede or relax on a sandy beach. Fly from London Gatwick to Tenerife with British Airways, with flights and 7 nights hotel from just £349 per person. Don't miss out. Book by November the 12th at ba.com/wintersun. With British Airways, incredible is within reach. Booking fees and conditions may apply. Limited availability. Selected flights in March.
Swinging a long drive, left field. He's got one now. Kurt Suzuki gives the Nationals the lead.
The excitement of the Fall Classic is here, and you can hear every call of the 2019 World Series on TuneIn Premium. The action continues tonight with Game 6 between the NL champion Washington Nationals and American League champion Houston Astros. Listen live at 8 Eastern as two of Major League Baseball's most storied franchises look to bring home the World Series title. The 2019 World Series is on TuneIn Premium.
Hi, this is Brian Weber, host of NFL First and Goal every Sunday, kicking off at 1 Eastern only on TuneIn Premium. Be sure to listen this Sunday